So, is this live? Am I looking at the wrong one? Maybe I'm looking at the wrong one. Oh, you're saying howdy. Yeah, so I'm looking at the wrong one. Can you link me? You probably can't link me. I'll have to go find my own chat. There it is. There we go. Now I can start to show. So, is this one?
The guys and gals have gotten website.
Oh, come on.
It's 11:59 at Radio Free America, and this is Uncle Sam with music and the truth until dawn. Right now, I got a few words for some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone. The chair is against the wall. The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind the lines, this is your song.
Hey, welcome everybody to our Daily Gun Show. Coming to you live every weeknight at midnight Eastern, and we talk about guns for an hour. All right, it might not be every midnight anymore, but we're back tonight. So I want to thank everybody who's been participating. Well, first our Patreons, of course. We would not even be here without Patreon, but then for the people who have been participating in the store, buying things and stuff. And appreciate that, because again, without that, we wouldn't have the time to work on this. So I sent out links to 38 people today, people that are worth a damn, and may or may not jump in. We'll see. And we're going to kind of rebuild the Daily Gun Show concept here, I think. And we'll see how many people show up tonight. Now that weather's changing in Arizona, I can change things around or not, time-wise, but got to start somewhere. So we're going to start with the original timeline or time slot, and that time slot is because the recording says it's 12 o'clock, and I figure that means it's either noon or it is midnight. Going with midnight because noon sucks butts. All right, so it's episode. I'm just calling it episode 899. I'll figure out what it actually is. It's probably, it would have been close to 899 if we would have been doing these things on a regular basis. Well, there's Gary. Somebody did. So I'm running this on the chamber, which is guntube.org. Mike runs a video hosting platform that's pro Second Amendment, pro gun, and works pretty darn good. And it lets us accomplish a couple of things. One, it gives us a live stream that's web-based as opposed to computer-based. So that means when I'm running it on my old computer here, nothing on my computer needs to really do anything except get to a browser, right? So it can see the internet. Then Mike's computer over at GunTube takes over and runs all the complicated stuff as far as hosting this whole thing. So I'm just using a browser, and now I send out links. It's a pretty simple link. Gary jumped in with it from Kansas, and thanks for joining.
Thanks for the invite.
You bet. So you got a weird work schedule. Is this like too late for you? Are you about to go to bed, or is this like normal time now for you because of your weird schedule?
Yeah, I normally won't go to bed for another hour at least.
Well, so everybody else loses Gary. I get a Gary for this, so I'll say thanks for your new schedule. So anyway, Gary was able to jump in with the GunTube link and no extra software or anything. I just joined into Brandon's chat earlier today, and that required software. Now, maybe I'm jumping the gun or not remembering everything. Does Chamber require some kind of browser plugin that I forgot about?
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I don't remember it. If it was just a browser plugin. I used something called Zoom, I think, today, and it was fine. It was a little different, but similar to Duck, and it required software on my machine, and I really don't like that a lot. So it wasn't intrusive, I don't think, but it requires effort on my machine's part, and if you don't have a good machine like me, that just means that I am adding more burden to my weak computer. Anyhow, so it worked for me earlier, but this is a better system. Mike's running this pretty much grassroots, on a low budget. So appreciate the effort. And anyway, I mentioned it because that's the tech we're using here to invite in a whole bunch of people. So I've invited about 38 people tonight, and we'll see who jumps in. So tonight I have a couple of things I'd like to chat about, or do live, I guess. One is talk about that conversation I had with, I don't know his name, it might be Chris, earlier on Brandon's chat on his new podcast. And Chris is an anti-gun person, I guess, someone who's more than just okay. He considers it reasonable to have licensing and what we would call infringements or gun laws he thinks would solve problems. So it was interesting to have a conversation with him. It was just one-on-one, him, me, and Brandon. So how it went, I figured we'd chat about that. And then you don't see me flipping here, but I'm flipping through basically an entire spiral notebook full of notes. I took a bunch of notes. Probably gun channels. Took a bunch of notes at gun rights policy and took a bunch of notes at AmCon, and I'm out. I'm done. I'm retired. I'm out of the I'm out of the 2A business. So just sent Bob a link. So if you want links, tag me on Gun Channels there. It's what it's for. It's a community, so we can communicate with stuff like this. But anyway, I'm out. So I'm going to go rogue. And I don't know if I might have been accused today of being, what would be the word? Like obnoxious or like unruly or not playing along or something, as if my interest is in being belligerent or confrontational because I have some interest in that or I have something to gain. It's actually out of frustration and pity and distress and disgust at this point that I'm going to bring it up. So I'm done. I'm not going to try to compete anymore. And with that said, I am going to simply report. And if somebody wants to say that I'm not playing by the rules or playing along, then I don't care, because I'm just going to say it how it is. And there's some cliques out there, and there are some, I don't know, whatever, like sides or whatever, and who cares? Like, if people can't figure out how to get past that, then we're doomed. So I'm certainly not going to not talk about them. And I don't know, maybe it's because I stand next to Yankee and he does some crazy shit. I don't do crazy shit just to do crazy shit. But at the same time, I got some notes, and we're going to talk about stuff in this show that nobody else will talk about, and I don't get paid to pat anybody on the back or to congratulate somebody for the 14th time for something they did years ago. I just want to see us all move, and there was a heck of a lot of pandering and a heck of a lot of taking people for granted and a heck of a lot of assumptions and a heck of a lot of old-fashioned ways of doing things. And again, I'm not going to pat anybody on. First off, nobody was, I'm talking about AmCon now, nobody was asked or given any kind of poll or any kind of influence on what was going to be done at AmCon. So we certainly can have an opinion on it, and it was not that great. A lot of pandering, and a heck of a lot of jumped in is not muted for granted, and a heck of a lot of assumptions, and a heck of a lot of old-fashioned ways of doing things. And again, I'm not going to pat anybody. First off, nobody was talking about AmCon now. Nobody was. What is that? Mute. All right, now I muted him. Is that Bob? I don't know who that is. I sent Bob a link, but I also sent out links to 38 people. So we'll see who that is. I muted you, whoever you are, and you'll have to unmute yourself over on the right, I guess. Right, Gary? No, under bottom, like in Gun Chat.
Down at the bottom.
YouTube.
Bottom of
Yeah.
the screen.
So whenever you want, unmute yourself. So whoever the new person is, this is GunTube. So when you want to change your name on GunTube, you go to those three dots at the bottom right, and the top item, I think, is your name. So you can change that to whatever you want. And we'll talk about other stuff here in a second, as soon as we figure out who this person is. I will go see. I am out of the 2A game or whatever. Like, I want people to. Here's the thing. I've been doing this for a while, 15 years, I guess, and I saw a potential to change stuff going into 2020. I think this is an important election. I've said it before. I'm telling it to everybody who's listening to this, I'm sure, for the third time or more. When the boomers, our parents, are going to hand the baton off to our kids, some like the younger gen who's never voted before. And I'm not necessarily optimistic or pessimistic about that. I'm confident that the kids will take it and run. And we had an opportunity to change their mind through what's the word? Like through action, by doing something, by being role models, by doing stuff as a what's the word I'm looking for? As a whatever representation. Yeah, I guess role model is the word. But anyway, we had a chance to do that, and that's why I was really efforting to get the community together and really do something. But I kind of knew that was futile. I figured I'd try because of AmCon, really, because no one had really tried before that. And it's just not going to happen. And I wasn't trying to force nothing. I thought maybe I could ease or facilitate and let nature take its course, but no, it's just not the way. In other words, you ever seen that sport where they play with a broom and a rock? If Bob's in here, he'll know what this is. And they throw a rock down ice, I think. And then a bunch of people stand there with, yeah. So I was just trying to be that guy with a broom. There's other people winging rocks. There's somebody else who made the ice, right? Somebody else figuring out the rules. I'm just trying to throw a brush in there, and it didn't do nothing. So now I suspect I'm being thought of as some sort of dick who's like screwing with people because I'm not satisfied with their weak ass efforts. So I just figure, fuck, I'll take myself out and I'll bitch about their weak ass efforts, just like whatever, like I'm allowed to, right? It's free speech and all that. But no, I'm not going to try to get people to be motivated. It's like I say, 15 years. I've seen people come and go. Some people who honestly would make us all look like a bunch of punks. Back in the day, I thought, wow, these people are role models, like to us. Like, wow, we should be paying attention to these people. They're really they got a head on their shoulders. They're doing it right. They got the resources. We are done. Like they are ready. They're chomping at the bit. Bunch of warm jello and it's baggy. They're useless. So that'll happen, right? There's people that are all that I just described, super good. And then something happens, takes them out at the knees. They're gone, right? We can't have heroes. So why need heroes? Like, we're not going to get heroes. We don't want heroes. They're not what we want. So I've always been a champion towards, individual efforts and value in what you're doing. And I'm going to double down on that. I think that many of the solutions that we were given, or we have been given over the last few years that were just reinforced in the last couple of weeks, were very organization based. And it's frustrating to hear the same people who will give you the organizations can fix everything tell you how you have to be active also. So I'm just going to screw it. We can be aware of the organization, but I'm certainly not going to petition for them. How to unmute down at the bottom, Bob? Like that little 3 dots down there?
There you go.
There you are.
You hear me?
Yeah, you're fine now. Whatever the hell you had my thing playing in the background before.
Yeah, I had it on the other computer.
Anyway, so Bob's in here. Back in the day, 899 or so episodes ago, me and Bob started this whole adventure to try to create a radio show format, right? We were going to just be the DJs. We wanted to create a structure so that people could do 10, 15 minute, 20 minute little segments, and then we would just spin them. We would say, hey, there's what somebody offered today, boom, and play a little 15-minute chunk, or here's what somebody else did and play 15 minutes. This was the beginning. Well, not the beginning. This was a couple of years into gun channels. Bob had come down here. At the time, Bob was loose, fancy free, running around country, different country, running around our country. And, we thought that would be neat. So we started it, and then it immediately changed formats pretty much. Like no one participated in that at all.
Yeah, pretty much became a job. So we did it for what? How many shows?
You were stuck around for quite a few hundred, many hundred. Yeah. So we're still doing them. I just took about a month off there where I couldn't do them, and I took about another month off there where I wasn't going to do them because I wasn't going to do them. It's not a job, It's not an obligation. But at the same time, it is something that I'm going to add my 2 cents. I've been in the biz for 15 years, and I don't mean the business. I just mean I have an interest in firearms. And today I had a conversation with this guy, Chris. It was a guy that Matt had on a while back. He was a friend of Brandon's, and I think he's from Colorado, but I don't know. He's from somewhere. And his deal was that he does a channel on cults or something, like religious cults, I think, and focuses on that kind of stuff, and then politics. And then he said that's how he got into the firearms thing, is after one tragedy, even though they're atrocities, but after one of the things, he got upset and is concerned about the kids, and anyway, so that's from the political angle he came into it. So in other words, a complete lack of interest in our community or culture or whatever, and then almost a lack of awareness and just enough education to be, well, I don't want to say dangerous, but just enough education to satisfy his own needs to be right or whatever, like justified, I guess. So it was difficult to talk to him. He really was okay with any kind of licensing he brought up. I suspect anything would appeal to him because he suggests that firearms incidents are preventable. So
that's absolutely ridiculous, right?
No. I mean, but that's the mindset. So for me, my goal we've talked to this guy before. And what happened was Matt had him on, because how often do you've been around, how often do we get a chance to talk to an anti? Like, never, right? Never.
No, hardly ever. Yeah.
They never want to talk, and if they do, it's just
they get butthurt right away. As soon as you start spouting facts at them, they're like, and next thing you know, they leave and say you're being abusive to them.
Again,
hang on for a second. I got to deal with something.
Being abusive to me. So I don't know if that's the factor or not, but yeah, they definitely, it's been ineffective, and we don't have much opportunity, I guess. So there's no way to know what it's usually like, because it usually isn't like anything. We've only had dots. We've never had any series at all. Anyway, so Matt did have this guy on before, and I forget who all was there, but he was the only one anti. And then Brandon was probably trying to play devil's advocate, plus Brandon's kind of, middle center, whatever you want to call it anyway. So, he's not necessarily gung-ho. So that was the closest thing that guy had to an ally, is Brandon. And whatever chat Matt was on, and then Yankee came in, and I forget what the specifics were, but something like one of the two of them, Yankee and this guy, somebody mentioned a statistic. So the other one challenged it, and then this guy, Chris, wouldn't accept the numbers. Like, he wouldn't accept, since he hadn't looked them up or something, or because we couldn't provide him, whatever, one of those glitches where, all of a sudden, since we can't agree on a number, we'll just have to end the conversation here. And then that was not going to go with Yankee, so he wailed on him verbally, I guess you could say, and then the guy left. And I hardly blame him, but at the same time, whatever. He was creating a situation so that he didn't have to deal with it. He didn't have to have a complete conversation. So anyway, this was a little bit different. It was just me and him. And he started out with suggesting that gun owners are obsessed. So, nobody likes to be called obsessed. It's because, not because I care about being called obsessed, but because it's a mischaracterization. It's marginalization. It's throwing a whole bunch of people into some misconception this guy has of some outlier, right? So it's associating all of us with whatever this guy's crazy idea of us are. So right off the bat, when he uses a word like we're, obsessive or whatever, that's where, right off the bat, I was like, oh. So it wasn't the best debate ever, but it was an opportunity I don't get very often. So it was pretty interesting, and it was the first time I've ever had a debate like that where I quit smoking. I don't know if I told you I quit smoking, Bob. So one of the reasons I don't like doing these chats, because I like smoking when I'm having conversations like this, especially when it's getting heated, right? Like, you want to have a cigarette.
Yeah.
So that was a little bit challenging, but I lived through it. And look forward to trying to chat with people again, because I don't think everybody's certainly not the same, right? People are going to have different tactics and appreciate things differently, but I don't feel like I had an agenda written down or nothing. But once it sort of, once the conversation started to develop, I kind of had an objective of what I wanted to get across, and I got to say it. However, Brandon ended it before I got to get any feedback from the guy, and the guy is just like Yankee. Like, it ended, and the guy jumped out. Like, he either doesn't know you can stick around after, or he just had no interest in sticking around after because he booked. So I have no idea if what I said got through to the guy, and that's really my goal, is to learn, to understand, with a conversation like this, to learn and understand what they're coming from, like how they think, and then throw some ideas at them based on that and see how they stick. And that's where I would value, is to get the feedback from the guy. Hey, did any of that stick? Like, did any of that resonate with you at all? Or was it just the equivalent of me yelling "shall not be infringed" over in a corner to myself, Anyway, I'm sure you guys didn't get a chance to see it because it was only on Brandon's private chat thing, and then I stuck my Instagram at it, and my phone died halfway through.
Well, I think part of the problem with talking with the anti-gun people is the only ones that are actually willing to get on, like the liberal type, Democrat type, that are actually willing to get on and talk to you about serious gun issues, are the real wackaloon extremists or close to it. The moderate Democrats, like you watch somebody like Tim Pool or someone like that, they're not anti-gun. I mean, they'll be like, well, maybe we need a license, maybe we need a little more training, but no, everyone should be allowed to get a gun, if they don't have criminal records, and it's the same thing we all want. But because they're moderate, they're just like, well, I don't really have an issue with Second Amendment, and there's a lot of like Democrats that, people that would normally vote left that just don't care. I mean, they think, yeah, it's fine. And especially if they live where you can use a gun, they're quite accepting of the fact that, yeah, we have a right to have guns. I mean, we got shit we got to shoot. So, yeah, it's the only, like I say, the problem is the only ones you get to talk to are the wackaloons, or the ones that are borderline wackaloon.
I don't want to say that this guy wasn't wacko or nothing. It's just that, well, he just didn't, we didn't have a chance to have a good conversation or whatever. That was partially because I didn't even realize that Brandon had never done this show before. This was his first podcast or whatever. And then it was only like an hour. So you're in the tube. So we got, there you go. And then if you want to change your names, it's the bottom right. There's 3 dots down there. And mute and everything is the same as everything else. So I don't want to call this guy wacko or nothing. I mean, we didn't agree or whatever, but I didn't have a chance, like I say, to even get any feedback from him to find out if I was understanding his position correctly. I think I was, but then if I was getting through it all. But I don't know. I don't see enough conversations. I mean, I don't watch, like you watch political stuff, Bob. I never, ever watch political stuff. Even when like you or somebody else will send me something like, oh, watch this. This guy's got a good, blah, blah. I don't even watch that usually, unless like, we were going to have a show about it, specifically talk about it or something, or we were actually talking about it in real life and you brought it up. Like, I don't seek that stuff out. I don't like politics.
I find them interesting. I don't like them because I think that most politicians are just slimy people. I mean, they really are. But
yeah, but again,
I think
we're talking about doing something, right?
Yeah, but we have to know what they're thinking, right? We have to know what the other side's thinking. Like, I mean,
well, other people, yeah, but yeah. I don't think your politician's ever going to tell you. But
no, but
other people, I mean, for sure, that's how you learn.
Right, and you listen, like, I mean, up here in Canada, it's in dire. Like, if we get, if that piece of shit Trudeau gets reelected, it's going to be the end of Canada. I mean, this guy, he wants to ban all semi-automatics, all of them, because they're weapons of war. evil guns. And you know why he's getting all this pressure? Because in Toronto, the big city, there's a gang problem and they're shooting each other. And of course, they're indiscriminate. They just spray the park. But they're using handguns. I mean, their big thing is Glocks and shit like that, right? They don't want a rifle.
Well, I don't know, now we're talking about Canada, so we're not going all the way to Canada's things. I understand you got stuff, but we'll talk about that in a specific show if you want. We're talking about this guy. So I'd rather talk about this particular guy while I've got him on my head, or got the conversation still. I'm able to recall it or whatever. My concern isn't to change this guy's mind, and that's, like I say, one of the failures of tonight's conversation, because Brandon only gave us an hour. I didn't realize any of it. I didn't know what the parameters of the conversation would be, or topics, or nothing. He basically just said he needed somebody who is pro-gun to talk to somebody who's anti-gun. So whatever, that is what it is. But here's the thing. Well, my problem with this guy is, and again, I don't feel like I need to change his mind or whatever, or anything more than inform him. But my concern is that he doesn't want, he prefaced the whole thing with, nobody here wants to take your guns. And I'm like, yeah, you son of a bitch. Like, I didn't say this, but I'm like, I wanted to say, yeah, you son of a bitch. That's my concern, is your cavalier attitude about how you're just going to nibble away. And it's not a big deal because I'm just nibbling away, with complete unawareness of how many times you've already nibbled away, or people like you who've said the same exact thing have nibbled away, with complete and utter ignorance, bliss, like even the lack of awareness, like an intentional lack of awareness as to what those other measures have done and what the consequences of them are. In other words, the guy's gonna come along, and I'm using this guy as an example, but as the person who has this mindset, they're just going to come along and say, oh, well, you have no justification for this little nibble, right? And then they are also suggesting that they're so smart or whatever, but they're, again, not going to think about how many other nibbles there's been, or, how ineffectual every other nibble had been, and why they need to ask for this one. One of my things is, how come you need to talk about this only after atrocities? His Brandon had asked a question, what do you do to stop school, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And of course the answer is, oh, just licensing, that'll stop it. That's a step, like it's something, like it's that idea of like, Craig said at Gun Rights Policy from Firearms Policy Coalition, he said, that's the idea that I'm going to go out and change the tires because we ran out of gas, just to do something. Like, they don't think about how ineffectual it is. They don't think about the consequences of it because we've been marginalized. So anyway, I guess that's my concern. My major concern after talking to this guy is that he feels justified. I feel like he feels justified in blowing off my position, our position, because, oh, well, I'm just trying to do this for the good, and you're just trying to keep a vice. Like, you're just trying to do, something that you want to do, and I'm trying to help people. And my goal is to try to express to this guy that I keep saying marginalizing because I like that word, because I think that's exactly what they're doing. They're intentionally using language in, creating a situation where we are either associated with the bad guys through whatever, through their manipulation. They're associating us with the bad guys, or associating us to be or creating a situation where we seem so cavalier as to allow bad to happen in spite of, or because of our position. So that was my goal. So I don't know, I'm blabbing on here, but without going back into Canadian politics, I don't know. Again, you guys didn't get to see it, but Woods jumped in here. Gary's in here. I don't know who else watching out there wants to jump in. Pink said he's working. I see Ghost out there. He's been working all day. It's probably why he didn't have a show. If he wants to jump in here, he's allowed to jump in bed, I guess. I don't care. Anyway, so anything else with that?
I'm just saying, it's the same thing as they just want to pile more laws on, make more restrictions, and yet none of the previous restrictions have done anything, right? I mean, handguns, unless you have a license in Canada, are completely restricted. And yet these, gangs in Toronto can go and get them anyway. And now they're saying, oh, we're going to make a new law that they ban handguns in the city. Like, is that going to make the criminals stop carrying them? No.
Went right back to Canadian law. Right back.
Well, no, I'm just making the point that the same thing this guy is espousing, the same solution that he's espousing does not work here where we've already tried it. So I don't understand why they just can't see that, it's been done before and it didn't work. Why do they keep thinking that more laws will work?
Well, they just don't see they don't see more law as a bad thing. To them, more law isn't a burden. It's just like an insurance policy, probably, right? It's like, oh, that's not a bad thing. It's just like another additional good thing that don't have any negative outcomes. Like you can just keep it.
That's a great analogy.
And I'm assuming, thanks. I'm just assuming he didn't get a chance to verbalize it like that, but I'm just going off of again, the nonchalant way that he was willing to, just throw everything on the state. I also think, and I kind of threw it in there, but he didn't have a chance to address it. And, somebody who's like a brain person, a therapist or something, or psychologist, whatever they call it, would know. There's got to be something about the antis where, oh, I really they are the kind of people like, oh, I really desperately want to help. So I'm helping, I'm folding it up in a little envelope and I've helped. I've now helped, I'm done. I've helped. I'm done now. They want to compartmentalize or whatever the word is, I don't know. You know what I mean? But they want to have said they've helped. And then some of them want to be able to pin that little folded little help thingy on their pin, and then wear it on their shirt and be like, look, I helped over here. I'm virtue signaling. I'm a helper. Look at how many times I've helped, and I've helped all these people, right? There's them, and then there's people who will oh, somebody needs help. They'll roll up their sleeves. They'll take time off work. They won't go to that sports game. They won't listen to NPR as they drive around in their convertible on a Saturday, but instead they'll build a house or they'll feed people or they'll help somebody get through the DTs or whatever the hell. And, there's people that do, and whatever motivation they got. And, again, if they want to virtue signal it, some of them I'm sure are helping so that they can pin something on this, have a better pin. But I think there's some of that to it. And I don't know if we're any better or worse or nothing as gun owners. It's just that I think that we're willing to not play that. You know what I mean? We don't go that route or something. We're not playing that. We're not looking for those buttons or those pins or whatever I'm saying.
It's also people if doctors around the world came out and said, skiing is really dangerous. We have to stop this sport. We're just going to ban skiing. A lot of people would sign on going, yeah, I don't want to pay those medical bills. Yeah, sure. I mean, that makes sense because they don't ski, right?
And
they could care less.
Exactly. And I think that was part of what this guy's deal was. He's like, so licensed guns, who cares? What's your guys' obsession with these things? Because again, he thinks, he doesn't think about it. It goes back in circles, but again, I've been doing this for a while, and I don't think there's any game in creating an organization that tries to educate people like him, because it's just too hard. They're not interested. It's like trying to teach somebody who's not interested. Free country, you can look the other way. You cannot go into that classroom. You cannot attend anything, right? People want to educate, feel free, but you're not going to change the world offering education, right? So then there's lots of people that'll just walk away and they're frustrated. And honestly, that's, I guess, where I was getting at the beginning of this show. And I'll try to address that. I'm trying to still get my head around it. But there's a certain amount of people that care about shit, period, right? And of that certain amount of people, some of them can and some of them do care, some amount of their lives. And of that time you're caring, you're able to, and you're like motivated to more often sometimes and less often. So everybody's fluctuating is what I'm saying. Like everybody that exists, like only a portion of them actually care about anything. Some of those people care about 2A. Some of the people that care about 2A are able to do it more often than others. And even those who do it the most often and even those who do it the least often fluctuate. They do it at levels. So because we're not all robots and we can't all just turn on, and it's unreasonable to expect us all to turn on, I think part of any strategy has to incorporate people that are taking a knee or whatever. Like, I'm out, I'm done for whatever reason. I'm out. I'm sick of this. Everybody's just capitalizing on this. Everybody's exploiting it. Everybody's making $1. Like, oh, you want to go to this rally? Like, that's just a scam to make money. Oh, you want to, resist this gun control? It's just a scam to make, there's just so many people, there's so many different levels to it that, I guess I get into this with trying to educate this guy. I don't think you can educate this guy. I think you can create info so that there is something there. Info exists, and then that challenges the void, right? Right now, I think what we got is a bunch of people who have a reason to be anti because Bloomberg's paying them, literally. I mean, everybody's like, oh, it goes back to Bloomberg. Is Bloomberg 10 times richer than Trump or 100 times richer than Trump? Like, Bloomberg's got a lot of money. So he is literally funding the other side, and you can tinfoil hat me. You can just say that discount it, I guess, say that I'm crazy, say that I'm exaggerating, but whatever. Like, you follow any of the big hitters on the other side, they go up to Bloomberg, and I'm not saying the sky's falling because I don't give a shit. I think it's an angle that we can use against them, but I'm just saying there's a supply line of money that's consistent. They don't really care if people are behind them. They don't really care, if the what's the word, like the tide isn't going in their direction or whatever. They can just consistently effort, and they're always going to win. It's just like playing the house. As long as you're always playing, you're probably always going to take a game, especially if you don't care if you lose. Like, they have nothing to lose when they lose. Whenever they actually lose, they get to play victim and say they took a beating. Say that we played crooked. They win even when they lose. So when their goal is to make money in the long term, just existing is winning for them. And we don't have that on this side. We have to, we either roll, nothing. We don't have to do anything. I think that we've existed this long without a coordinated attack, and we will not have a coordinated attack going forward. Just do not see us having a coordinated attack. We'll have small efforts in coordination, and we'll have collaboration. But anyway, I guess what I'm getting at is I'm trying to come up with some sort of what's the word? Like a system of attack where we incorporate all the different situations that people on this side will have, and I'm just experiencing more and more of those types of situations. Unfortunately, is what's making the job tough. But seeing more of those types of situations from this angle, from our side, from the pro-gun side. And I don't know if I'm talking in circles there or not, but I guess what it started with was, talking to this guy or talking to antis in general and educating them versus getting pissed at them, yelling at them. I'll let you guys talk. Gary should say something. He's getting paid and he's just sitting there.
I'm just sitting here thinking you've made a lot of sense in the last few minutes. And really, you follow the whole thing down to the bottom line. It's not really about guns at all. It's about control, and it's about just trying to impose their will by creating more and more laws. It's always been that way. It's always going to be that way. And they're fighting their fight by demonizing us, making us look like the bad guy. We're the ones that don't care about street crime. We don't care about murders and stuff like that. Well, nothing could be further from the case. That's not true. But that's the way they're making us look. By having control of the media and everything else, they're accomplishing that. And
here.
about the only way to fight that is, for one thing, don't be that. You know, don't be monsters. Don't act like monsters. Act like regular people. It's what we are.
And that's what we all do. I mean, has any NRA member ever been associated with any kind of mass shooting? No. I mean,
I think they can reach for one. I think there's one that they can kind of say, kind of.
yeah, but I mean, it's
seriously one out of however many crazies. So
Pretty sure as heck don't
Well,
cheer and say, "Oh, what's the big deal when there's a mass shooting?" We don't do that. Nobody does that.
hell no.
well, okay. So we're stating obviousness or whatever, but again, that has to do with, in my mind, that has to do. All right, what should I say? The fact that they can only come after us after atrocities. The fact that they seemingly, either have control or, have the ear of the media, and the media can't stop talking about these atrocities when they happen, when they're politically motivated and they use a specific piece of property. They can't even control themselves. Let me ask this question, and one of the things I wanted to talk about before when I was talking about the conversation with Chris, with Brandon's chat, is I really wanted to preface the whole thing, and I attempted to preface it with some numbers, just so that we were working with the same playing field or whatever, so that he couldn't later suggest that, like, oh, well, we don't know what these numbers are. So I asked him how many people get killed with guns, and he eventually said, oh, I don't know. And I said, well, I think the number now is 33, but I'm going to give you 40 just so it's an easier number to deal with. So I'm going to exaggerate on your end, or, whatever, estimate on your end, or whatever it's called, and then round it up like a lot so that it's going to 40. And that's including 2/3 of them are suicides. So most of those are suicides by far. The real number is more like 8,000, which is actual violence with guns, one person on another. And that includes, of course, every justifiable police lethal incident. But, I'm going to give them, I told them I'd give you 10,000 there just to make the numbers. So 40,000 and 10, which, is higher than the actual number of 33 and 8. And once he figured out that I was talking about tens of thousands of people, he said, almost quoting him, something like the effect of, oh, I thought it was more like 66. So I was like, yeah, it was 66 not too long ago. Now it's down to 40. And again, that's a lot of suicides and stuff. But the fact is that we're, have less deaths now. So anyway, I wanted to establish some sort of numbers with the guy. And that's something that we don't get to do, I don't think. Like, I also asked him how many gun owners there are, just so, again, that we could, if he's thinking there's 16,000 gun owners, I mean, I don't know, I'm just pulling a number out of my butt, but if he thinks there's very few gun owners and that we're responsible for, like, all these guns being left around because we're, not paying attention, and we just leave guns out for kids to have accidents and kill each other with, if that's what they think, like, then they should be challenged, right? Because there's literally, he even brought up, there's like 1.4 guns for every person in the country, like something like that. Like, we have 40% of the guns on the planet. So I'm like, dude, we have 40% of the guns on the planet. You're sitting there talking, you literally brought up the number that we have 1.4 guns per person, and we have 8,000 instances of violence, like 8,000 in a country of 300 million. I think he said there was 306 million people. So, where is this urgency? Where, at least, so I think what you guys were saying, I would ask them to start with some sort of where's our playing field? Like, what's our base numbers here? Because they're going to suggest blah, blah, blah. We need to do all this to save the lives of these people. It's like, well, how many people are we talking about? And, how many people are not doing things wrong that you're going to affect, so that you can try to affect how few people over here. And I know that's not, like, going to win people over, but if it explains the situation, so that they understand that they are literally being manipulated, the antis are literally being manipulated by people who, by omission, are suggesting that we are less, that we're marginalized. I don't know what the better word is, that we are simply obsessed with this phallic symbol or violence or something, right? And that, we're just obsessed with this vice. Like we're addicted to this vice. It's like a heroin addict, justifying his heroin thirst.
Well, and
So anyway, I figure we made to start with a basis, like a line, so that we at least all could say, okay, we don't have to agree on this number, but we can all start with this number, so that we're not, they're not thinking gun deaths are our number one problem in the country, and that they understand where they are in relation with the other things. I interrupted you. Go ahead.
no, that was actually the point I was going to make. Is if you compare those to the drug overdoses, the car accidents, the children drowning in pools, things like that, it just makes the whole argument moot.
Yeah, aren't there there's more guns than people in the United States? Am I correct on that?
This guy even brought up 1.4 guns according to this guy's UN number. I'm like, I don't know how the UN knows, but I don't care. Let's say the UN knows 1.4 guns. I'm not going to complain. So 1.4 guns. I'm like, it's sort of like that meme, right? If it was a problem, you'd know it. Like, how are we even alive if there's 1.4 guns, if guns are so bad?
Well, if you took all that violence and you put it onto a bell curve, right? So the times that, like, it's the mass murderers that they're all worried about, and once again, the murderers are already okay with murder, so like more laws aren't going to stop anybody. But that's a couple standard deviations out. I mean, it's a very rare thing. Does that make sense?
Say it again.
So if you took all the gun, the 33,000 times that somebody died with a gun, including suicides, right? And you took that they're up in arms for like school shootings or mass shootings in general. That's and you put all that on a bell curve. The school shootings would be way right shifted. It'd be a couple standard deviations out. It's a very rare thing.
Yeah, that's a tough one, because I think you or Gary said it before. They only talk about this stuff after an atrocity, and they won't talk about it after any atrocity doesn't fit their agenda. But that really doesn't matter. I mean, it should be brought up when you're addressing someone who wants to be intellectually honest. Because again, you don't get to be a person in an ambush. In other words, sitting on a hill, waiting for your prey, your victim, to walk down a path unaware and to shoot at them. You don't get to do that and not be questioned on who told you to sit there, who gave you the rifle, and who told you it was okay, who told you that was an enemy and not just another human being you had no right to shoot at, right? So when they're going to suggest, blah, 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 the children, we should at least be comfortable and challenging, why are you bringing this up today? How come you only bring this up when you have children's bodies to stand on? Why won't you bring this up in the middle of the things when we can talk about this honestly? How come you have to hide behind emotional? How come you have to hide behind survivors and victims? Why do you have to put firearms owners in a position to, in your mind, justify the actions of a horrible individual who politically decided to choose this? Why do you ignore the 1,000 people a year that die intentionally from felonious arson? I looked that up during the show. Didn't get a chance to talk about it. 1,000 people a year. That's 3 times the amount of people that die from all firearms, or excuse me, all rifles. We know that assault rifles are just one kind of rifle, and that all rifles together, every lever action, every shotgun, everything that's longer than a handgun that hurt anyone in any way, including suicide, police shooting at someone like a sniper, a bad guy with a gun, anything, it's like 400, right? 1,000 people died as victims from someone else intentionally lighting a fire. So, the people that are going to challenge us to tell us about babies or children at school or why their children have to go to school scared. How did you allow a situation to happen where your child is scared to go to school when 3 times more likely to be burned to death? And that's almost inconsequential. Again, 1,000 people in a country of 300 million. It's embarrassing to point at it because it's such an inconsequential number. In fact, it doesn't even get reported in the news. Has anyone ever heard of an arsonist, murderer? What would you call that? Like an active arsonist? Like, I don't know what they don't try to persecute arsonists the way they do us, so they don't come up with flashy terms to talk about people that burn people to death. But they're going to suggest that a red flag law. Oh, let's stop someone from having a gun, and then walk right past the matches, the gasoline, and every freaking way that someone could start a fire. Lock doors. I mean, it's ridiculous how horrible, horrible, horrible we could be to each other in millions of different ways if the media was out there lighting that flame. And every time a murderous arsonist did something, they were infamized, right? There was a day about them. And years later, they'd have an Oprah show about it. The victims would be whatever, memorialized, and survivors would be on, grandma shows for the rest of the time. We'd see nothing but arson.
You'd be lucky to get
be
that.
scared of arsonists. We'd have cameras that would tell if you have lighters in your hands. Like, smokers would be considered potential arsonists, right? Like, why would you carry a lighter around? Sure, you could vape, but you chose to carry a thick lighter around, you arsonist. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, so maybe it's just a slippery slope. Maybe a way to talk to these people is to bring up this arson thing, and then, oh, well, how come we don't talk about arson on this? And blah, blah, blah. Like, how do we know that the next thing they're going to persecute is arson? Like, we already know smoking's bad, and no one's allowed to smoke anymore, and you have, like, you're, second-class citizen if you smoke. All right, well, so...
Well, that's a good point. I would actually like to add to that. When you're talking about the slippery slope and arson possibly being the end of their control or part of their control, look at what's happening in Britain, right? Right now in Britain, you can get arrested for carrying a bread knife. Think about that. Like that's now a bread knife is now considered a dangerous weapon. Like what kind of, and they have cameras everywhere. And yet they still have a higher crime rate than New York and London.
Yeah, this guy wouldn't really, that was a tough one too. We only had an hour. We didn't have topics, so it's not like I could schedule nothing. I just had to wing it. And all I know is vaguely that one list that lists all the most violent countries or whatever. Not by guns, because I'm not obsessed by guns, but just of violence or whatever. And, or is it gun violence? But anyway, we're pretty low on that list. Like if the list was 200, we're like 120 or 140 or something. We're like under 100. Or we're under halfway through, like on the safer side of everything. But yeah, and that's where he said something. And here's the thing, like, and I'm just picking at this guy. It's the only conversation I've had, so obviously it's the only one I can pick on. But he said something like, blah blah blah, and then England is less violent because they don't have as many deaths as we do, and blah blah blah. Now what he was thinking was it's less gun violent because they don't have as many gun deaths. But he said violent. And they don't have as many deaths. So, of course, later when I tried to bring it up, he's like, well, that's not what I meant. I'm like, all right, fine. So it's not what you meant. But, again, we're so marginalized as a segment of society. You have so little interest in our interests, in our property, in our, what we consider valuable, whatever, like, important stuff, that you're willing to just throw gun violence, which is obviously germane to what we're talking about here. Like it's specifically important to what we're talking about, and you're just going to throw it in with all violence. Like, so I'm saying, like, so if you're going to dismiss this so casually, it's an indication that you have like very little interest in our side of the conversation. So this guy was there to present his side of the story, and I think I'm efforting at understanding what he's trying to do, and then offer some insight. I don't know if that's going 60%, but that's I've heard it going 60%. So I was trying to understand what he's saying and not waste my time offering a rebuttal, but instead try to enlighten. So again, if he was going to say, oh, well, what about we're trying to save one child by licensing? I'd try to say, well, I'm not going to entertain licensing. That's ridiculous. Like, I want to challenge the idea that by taking guns away, we're safer. When you take guns away from Mexico, you get cartels. Like, you think that by taking more guns away, you're going to make things safer. You don't get to be in some like petri dish where there's not borders. Like, that's like saying if you make drugs illegal, there'll be no drugs. We won't have drug addicts anymore. That's fantasy, right? Like, they get drugs anytime they want them. They have all kinds of borders they can get through. So to suggest that you wouldn't have guns.
I watched something tonight that mentioned that, the first gun restrictions came at the same time as the drug restrictions, and they restricted them all together. Well, now they're legalizing all these drugs, but they're not going to take the restrictions away on firearms, eh? This is where it all started, because the gangsters were using guns, and they were, dealing drugs and booze and shit, and it was all illegal. But the gangsters, didn't care that they changed the laws.
But if they're so concerned about...
Go ahead.
What I was going to say was, if they're so concerned about children, their lives are in danger, they're worried about the visible killers. What about the invisible killers? What about childhood obesity? What about the diabetes epidemic? Are we doing any kind of education in the schools? Where's the dietitians in the schools? Where's the education on nutrition? Where's the emphasis on physical education we used to have? We'd get kids out of the classroom and out on the playground and playing games and stuff like that. And, stuff like that. And obesity and diabetes kills far more kids every year than stuff like that. And then mental health.
Guns. Hold on, but that's a diversion. Hold on, no, don't go that way. Let's stop with the diabetes one, because that's a good one. But it's a diversion, dude. If you just say that, it's a cop-out, right? Because, it allows both parties, if they're sick of talking about it, an out, right? Okay, yeah, you're right. We should worry about this bigger problem. But it's not really addressing anything and not offering an alternative. So here's what my spin on it would be. Something to the effect of, you want to address the concept that, okay, you're coming at me with this issue, like how are we going to stop, just one child from getting hurt or whatever, and blah, blah, blah. So you're going to suggest to me, your only suggestion is to me to regulate millions of gun owners who have shown responsibility through lower accident rates and lower crime and lower everything, really. And everything that we have to now study, because you're so concerned, we now study, and everything is shown that responsible gun owners, right, have lowered these things. However, they haven't lowered them to zero, and you're holding us accountable as if zero is attainable, and you're saying that we need to do this. However, you don't let us train kids in school how to be safe. So even though we have, but I'm pretty sure I heard at the Gun Rights Policy Conference, only 50 gun accidents, fatal gun accidents per year in a country of 300 million people, 50 states, 300 million people, 365 days a year. I'm pretty sure I was told we have 50 accidental gun deaths in this country. That's incredible, right? So if guns are so dangerous, that couldn't happen. But you're right, it's not perfect. It's not zero. So what I think a better way than saying, oh, what about diabetes is, look, you want zero gun deaths, gun accidents, right? But we also want zero kids to die from diabetes, which is a much bigger killer. We can both acknowledge that gun deaths are somewhere in the thousands, where diabetes and health disease and all these other things are in the tens or hundreds of thousands, right? Even of kids. But what do we do for that? Because that's a super critical thing. Do we outlaw food? No. But what do? We educate kids, and we try to offer them alternatives, and we try to get, whatever. So why can't we do that with guns? Why is it forbidden to teach kids safety about guns? Why is it forbidden to talk about guns in school? Why is it forbidden for the millions of law-abiding gun owners? Why are we being blacklisted from the social media platforms about talking about how to be responsible with our guns? Why is it that only exaggerated movie representations of guns are allowed and only atrocities are focused on? Why are you creating an environment where you're encouraging these 50 deaths and then requiring us to somehow, with all those hands tied behind our back, bring that number from 50 to 0? So maybe I think that's something that you can kind of focus on the fact that we do educate for those kids with diabetes and still fail, where they don't even let us educate with guns. And then that's kind of throwing it back at them. Like, how come we're not saving these kids' lives, just one life? Why are you preventing us from saving the 50 that we can't do out of, all of our efforts?
Because it's not politically correct, and nowadays it's all about how you're perceived by the media, and the media is biased.
All right, well, that's another one. Let me go back to your gangster one. You brought up the gangster thing, and yeah, I mean, I just like to throw in that all organized crime, there wasn't even such a thing as organized crime until Prohibition, unless I'm mistaken. But I've taken some cop classes before, and I've watched some Ken Burns shows. And when they created Prohibition on alcohol for a while, that's when the speakeasies and the Prohibition era gangsters, the guys with Tommy guns and basically all the machine guns from World War I, that either never got shipped overseas or brought back or whatever, they were just available. They had those firearms, and there was dime novels and stuff, and just like cowboys and lawmen and outlaws and stuff back in the day, all kinds of stuff was exaggerated, and there was no radios in police cars, so you could drive across state lines and not be in jurisdiction anymore. So at a time when there was no TV yet, there was just barely radio, and the organized crime and the gangsters were like the dime novel heroes or whatever. At that time, they tried to say something that's a vice, that how many people participate in is now illegal in an entire country. And I don't remember the specifics, but it certainly wasn't 99% of the people said, yeah, let's do that. It was like a few people said, let's do it. Nobody stopped them. I think too many people either weren't paying attention or were like, haha, that's crazy. And then it happened, right? So now there's a bunch of people who are like, dang it, I like drinking. And then there's a bunch of people that are probably addicted to drinking. And then there's a bunch of people that don't care. And then there's a few people that make the cops attack everybody who's, participating in it all. So we get levels of bureaucracy and enforcement and regulation and persecution and imprisonment. All of that stuff gets created by trying to stop people from living their fucking lives. And then when they finally say, oh, wait, that was a dumb idea, like, let's vote this shit out of here, look at how much bad came from it, we have residual effect. We have organized crime went from worrying about alcohol to doing numbers and books and stuff, right? Betting on races and strong arming people. Like, now they've created it. So I just wanted to throw that in there. It's not like, again, that these people can go, oh, we're just standing here doing nothing, or like, this country's a bunch of jerks and that's where crime comes from. Like, no, it's a bunch of jerk do-gooders who screwed with freedom for a little while and created organized crime. And ever since then, a bunch of jerks, like asshole criminals, have been like, oh, this is awesome. Like, we can do whatever the fuck we want over here. And, federal level, they have to go after us. And it turned into the gangsters are turned into mafia, and then whatever the hell between that and then the big gangs and whatever you want to call these street gangs now, have been infiltrated by the big gangs from the cartels and shit. So you put 2-point-something million people in prison, and you basically create colleges, like graduate level institutions for learning and indoctrination into these organized levels of crime. Yeah, there you go. And then put a shit ton of people in jail for nonviolent shit next to people that are in jail for the violent shit. So then they get to go, oh, it's a violent country. Oh, and then I tried to tell this guy, will you acknowledge that of all the gun crime we have here in the United States, all of it comes from 5 counties. Like literally all of it comes from 5 counties. There's like an occasional domestic disturbance here and there in the rest of the country, but pretty much all the numbers come from 5 counties. And he would not acknowledge that. So, you know what I'm saying? Like they want to suggest that we're a dangerous bunch of people, that guns have some sort of power, that like somehow by removing guns from good people, somehow by just taking a little nibble from good people because it's for the kids, there might be some good benefit from it, that there's no bad, and that they get to live in this like land of low crime and freedom because there's consequence for actions, and and the people that would fill the void, if there were no firearms in people's closets and no, consequence to a gang going down the street in a pickup truck shooting out windows, they think that that's not going to happen in the United States, that somehow the police strike the fear of whatever into criminals, and that the reason we don't have cartels owning small towns out here is because the police have such jurisdiction. Maybe I'll shut up. It's like Honda jumped in. I don't know how long we want to go. It's been an hour and a half. I don't really need to rant. I've been ranting, but I don't know if people are watching, but feel free to jump in. I've just been chatting about, I don't know if you've been listening, I've been chatting about a conversation I had with one of Brandon's friends earlier, a person who's not opposed to anti-gun stuff.
Well, are you talking about anti-gunners, or are you talking about mobsters? Because I was, well, like when you were talking about the
mobsters. It just turned into mobsters because Bob had brought up organized crime or something, and I just always liked.
Well, the mobsters.
Just to get one point in before everybody else talks. That's also the time we allowed women to vote, and women were behind prohibition. So I just say that was the biggest mistake we ever made, was allowing women to vote. And yeah, send all your hate to Biker Bob 59.
Well, I was going to say, I think at points in our history, the government was against the mobsters or the organized crime. Like they increased their power to fight them based upon the need because of whatever, But then at other times, like if you look at like what happened with Castro and the Cuban crisis, we actually worked with the mobsters and hired them to go down to Cuba and attempt to assassinate him. And like that's not conspiracy, that's not a frog chat thing. That's like documented historical fact, right? So like at different points and different times, like these were useful people to those people in power who wished to gain more power, either by passing laws to fight against them or by using them directly to do things that they weren't allowed to do. So the fact that there was, and probably still is to some level, some organized crime in the United States isn't necessarily a bad thing for those who wish to gain even more power today, was the point that I was...
Yeah, right. This ain't a frog chat, but yeah, that's fine. But, no, we were just talking about the gangster shit because we were talking to this guy who was anti-gun. Well, it's unfair to call him anti-gun. He's kind of nonchalant about things like red flag laws or licensing for guns or restrictions. He's okay with what he considers reasonable in order to stop what he considers or he would classify as preventable deaths.
Well, and he hasn't thought it through. Like talk to people in London about like the knife stabbing deaths and all the stuff that happens there and the muggings.
No, but that's the thing. He actually see, and this is, I don't know, you were in the chat maybe. This is the guy who was in that chat with Matt and everybody, and then he was a friend of Brandon's, and he's like or he does a channel that they talk about
I was in that
cults,
chat.
religious cults and stuff. Okay, so that's guy. So it was just me and him and Brandon.
Yeah,
Is
it
his name Chris? Okay. So anyway, so that was the situation. So
When did you do that? Oh, is it already
earlier this
posted? I didn't
evening.
see it.
No. So Brandon did it on a thing called Zoom, which was just us three, and then I guess it records. And then Brandon said this was his first one. He's now attempting to post it, I guess, on YouTube. Hopefully, he'll post it on gun channels also. But I ran it. My phone died, but I ran it for about a half an hour on Instagram. So half of it will be on my Instagram for how that live thing is there for 24 hours or whatever. That's the only thing I could do. So it was just sort of an impromptu chat, and the guy started the chat conversation with his position, which was like, gun owners are obsessed with guns, and if we can stop these preventable deaths with things, some common sense stuff, then that's okay. And I guess what I was trying to get across, not just to beat a dead horse because dead horse ain't even in here, isn't just that, I had this conversation, it was valuable, but I'm trying to understand their point of view, right? Like understand what your lack of is, or where you're coming from that's different, right? There's got to be something different, like some major things different, and then try to explain some things, because I just don't see I think it's an engineered back and forth, right? Like, I want to save just one child. My liberties. Like, you're obsessed with guns. Like, you don't care about the second. There's like these platitudes we throw back and forth. We shrug our shoulders and go, we'll never agree. And then we walk away. And I'm not satisfied with that. I'd like to get beyond that to where, especially somebody like this guy who probably don't care one way or the other. It's just that he's only been given this one side, and it seems reasonable to him. He doesn't see that, or he doesn't connect that there, he even threw the number out, 1.4 guns per person in this country. I tried to get him to agree that, how many gun owners can there be? We don't know, right? We know there's 300 million people. We know there's 1.4 guns for each person. So there's got to be like more than 3 million guns. Like, there's got to be more than 1,600 gun owners, right? There's got to be like millions of gun owners probably. So if millions of gun owners exist today and yesterday and the 365 days of last year, and then the 10 years of the last decade, and then the guns have been around literally since we started the country, like, that's a lot of people and a lot of guns. The issue is and I gave them the number of 40,000, trying to get them to understand, like, where's the logic there? Like, where do you see this? So I guess, trying to see it from their angle. He was willing to, again, throw our whatever interest, our like obsession, our like, just whatever, like casual disinterest in other people's lives. Like, he was willing to screw with that because he doesn't know nothing about it. Anyway, I don't know how we really got into the gangs thing so much. Then I guess I was saying that he doesn't. I tried to get some information to him, right, so that we weren't just listening to each other, so that he would actually think about something, take something out of it. And I didn't have a chance to really do that. But one of the things I wanted to get across to him was that if he takes guns, that doesn't just mean there's less gun deaths. Like, okay, if there was no guns, Jeannie blinks her eyes, guns don't exist. Yes, it is not possible for those people to die from guns. Now, he'll say that the suicides, and I'm not going to challenge him, even though I think it's incorrect, but he'll say that more people are successful if they shoot themselves with suicide than not. So if there was no guns, people would unsuccessfully kill themselves.
Well, then that number would only go down by a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, let's say, like So
No,
that's a
no.
little difference,
Well,
but yeah, I
so-
don't know. I think the lack of information part of it is the biggest thing that needs to be conveyed in a way that is understood. And it sounds like you were more successful with
Well,
it
that's
this
what
time.
I'm saying. It's not so much the information. It's not the information because they're never going to care about. They're never going to agree with the numbers if that's what you meant by information. I was just trying to get across that like you're being manipulated. You're being told that 1 million people's interest is casual. 1 million people or more. It could be. I've heard 100 million gun owners. I think it's probably more like 30 million, maybe. And I've heard lower than 30 million, right? So some amount of millions of gun owners' interest in guns is in spite of our knowledge that it hurts children. Like, what are you saying? Like, it's because we are so obsessed. Are you like? Is there some like recipe book or some like directions that you get to choose from, where like bullet points where you get to go? Okay, well, gun owners are, and you choose from this list. Like, we're one, we're this, we're this. Like, screw you, guy. You don't get to just choose this. And you're so intellectually superior to us. Like, you're so worried about the children and blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to challenge any of that. I'm just going to challenge, like, where do you get off? Like, who tells you once and you believe it wholeheartedly that the millions of us are fucks? That we are millions of dinks who fucking sit here not giving a shit about kids, and that we are just that ignorant, that fuck off, like we're just a bunch of fucking hicks. Like, fuck you. Like, if we were pool owners, would we have to get together and suggest, like, we just like swimming? Like, we're not here to drown people. We didn't build these big holes in our backyards, fill them with water, and spend a ton of time keeping it clean to neglectfully kill people. I mean, just because that happens, no one persecutes pool owners, right? Like, fuck them for persecuting us because of the acts of some criminals. And I think the whole thing started was, why should school murders or whatever, how do they cure school murders? And I'm like, fuck you. Like, what do we have to, where did it come off that we have to worry about school murders? Like, first time somebody drowns somebody in the ocean, does everybody who lives next to the ocean have to come up with a solution to that? But I guess that's where
it sounds like the conversation went better than it did last time. I mean,
it went better because it went for an hour. Like, I was just bitching that because it was just sort of a random and non-structured thing, I really didn't get any feedback from the guy. He just jumped right out as soon as it was over. So I didn't get any feedback if any of my points got across. I mean, I can be a dick. I'm not gonna. I know that.
That dude's in Colorado,
like,
right?
Whatever.
Like Littleton or something,
right?
if I remember correctly. Yeah.
Now that I'm thinking about it more, I was saying, like, hey, you guys are right next to each other or something. You were saying, like, we're close to each other. But I don't remember. All right, well, that was a hell of a long time talking about a conversation that only me and Brandon really listened to. But let's see what everybody's saying out here. There are links on gun channels for anybody who wants a link. Connery's over there, but I don't think he's awake. Did his puppies have babies yet?
I don't know.
Why, you want another dog?
Everyone is posting pictures of puppies
No,
on my Discord all day. Maybe one of them was him.
He's got one of them kind of dogs. I don't know what they are. They're like a Chihuahua, but they got long hair, and they might be even smaller than a Chihuahua. They're like little tiny dogs. And they got long hair. But not super long, like a Scott.
Yorkies, right?
Taco Terrier.
Yorkie, maybe? No, he's never
Yorkies.
said those words next to each other. It's whatever you... I think it's Yorkies. Are they tiny? Or he has teacup Yorkies or some shit. I don't know. It's some word that it's some dog I've heard before. I never heard of Taco. Plus, that's probably racist. Taco Terrier. What the hell?
I don't know. But you take a terrier and you breed it with a Chihuahua, and you get these things that are like part Chihuahua, part terrier. They're insane. My ex-girlfriend had one that used to hang off Charlie's face. It was just a crazy dog. It's like the size of his mouth. I mean, they're insane. They're cute as hell, though.
Yeah, that's
really...
that makes me think of something else that would be interesting to talk about. I'm going to type it over in the site here, and maybe we'll talk about it if we have time after. So I texted Clover. I guess he's not awake, so I'm going to save some of these topics to when Clover's around. But yeah, these are tiny little dogs that are like more than maybe for me like one handful, like maybe for a little kid 2 handfuls, but like little. And then anyway, he said that they locked up already the other day whenever I was listening to him, and then I think it's saying Yorkies too. So I'm guessing I don't know how long do puppies take? Months or like 9
like
months? They don't take 9 months.
12 weeks or something.
3. Yeah, they're pretty quick. So anyway, he's online, but he might be over there dealing with puppies or something. All right, so like I said, I tried texting Clover. I don't see him in the chat. He didn't text me back, so he's probably sleeping. I got a couple of topics that are from the gun rights policy, and I'm looking. None of y'all went to it anyway, so I don't want to wait. I'll leave these. Plus, we've been chatting forever. But since y'all are in here and we're still awake, I just watched the coolest thing. I'm pretty sure it was a TED Talks, or if it wasn't, it was just like a TED Talks, and it was about extra senses. So you've heard of people that gone blind before, or people that lose their hearing, or things like that, like lose a limb, right? And then they get like a fake limb, or they get some kind of hearing aid, or implants, right? So have you ever seen how these implants work? Like for eyes or for ears?
Are you talking about like where they wire it into your brain, basically?
Kinda, yeah. So they take a camera and then they turn it into digital, and then they turn that digital into something, right? And then they attach that something into a wad of nerves, like a nerve bundle. And then magic happens, and then people figure it out, right? So
Yeah,
you heard
actually,
about any of the
there's
stuff
people
before?
who were born blind who can now, at least in the lab or whatever, under those conditions, see. I don't know if they can necessarily walk out and have a normal life with a camera on their head after that, but they're at least a start to that. You know what I mean? Same with hearing too.
Yeah, so that's the concept. Everybody's with you. So here's the deal. So what they figured out, at least this guy, and this might not be science or whatever, but this guy was on a TED Talk, so it's probably science. So basically, you've got these inputs to your brain. One of them is your eyes. One of them is your whatever, our senses, right? So when let's say you are born or you lose a sense, you've still got that input. So one of the things they'll do is, back in the day, I think, at least this was the first way or something, I forget exactly what he said. They'll take a camera, they'll turn the digital camera output, whatever, into a pattern, let's say, and then they'll attach that to the eye nerve bundle, right? So whatever it is that comes out of the camera starts hitting that nerve bundle, and that nerve bundle starts interpreting it. Now, like you say, it ain't an eyeball, so it's not the exact same set of pokes and wiggles and beeps and squiggles or whatever happens in there. It ain't the same as an eyeball, but it's a set of stuff. So basically what this guy's deal was, his hypothesis or whatever his vision was or is that our brains aren't out looking at stuff. They're sitting inside of our skulls. They've got these 2 eyeballs and these 2 ears and whatever other pieces that are attached to them through nerve clusters, but they're only seeing whatever the eyeball sees or whatever the ear hears. So this guy starts out the presentation really cool. And I probably should have started it out that way because it was really well done. He starts it out with like, we only see this little sliver. So if you think about it, first off, there's huge ass experience out there that we can't even imagine. Universes, galaxies, giant celestial stuff that's massive, right? We barely understand it. Huge. And then we can go small to where microscopes and atoms and everything. We only deal with stuff that's like our size and that we can see. So, on the scale of things, we're like this slice, this little slice between giant and tiny, right? So first off, as an experience, us and everything else on the planet is only dealing with stuff at this certain level. Then you get to things like the electromagnetic spectrum, everything from ultraviolet to whatever wavelengths. We only see and hear this little piece on this giant spectrum. So if you think of like a specific snake or a worm or a bat or a dolphin, they have different input devices than we've got. They can sonar, they can heat sense, they can X-ray, they can infrared. They're experiencing the world differently than we are, shifted on the spectrums than we are. So, then what Bob said about the dogs, what got me thinking about it. He says, like, think about like a basset hound, thinking about the world as a basset hound. He's like, what if you're a basset hound, you're walking along and you look at some human and you're like, what the hell would it be like to be a dumbass human? Like that human's little tiny ass nose, because their nose is like, what, 10, 100 times bigger than ours? Like their little dumbass nose would only know like what it smells like right around it. It wouldn't know about that cat over there. And it wouldn't know that a dog walked past here at 3 o'clock yesterday afternoon. And it wouldn't know that I was standing right here and I peed over there, right, yesterday. Like, what I'm saying? Like dogs experience the world all different because of their nose is 100 times bigger than ours. And they would not understand what it's like living through ours. That's how he started this whole thing. And I was like, wow, this is neat, right? So then he talks about how you take a camera and you hook it up to your eye nerve center. And it doesn't really matter because your brain is just in there experiencing impulses from nerve clusters. If you plug a camera in there, if you plug a siren in there, if you plug something else, basically give your brain enough time, it's going to figure it out. So that's what this guy's whole thing is. So his, TED Talk is always about how the future is going to be new and better and different. Like his deal is that they figured out that you don't need to attach that camera to your eye nerve cluster anymore. You can attach that camera to a person's tongue, and their tongue can experience the bells and whistles and whatever you turn that camera into, if it's pulses, if it's texture, touching, if it's a spark, like a electrical signal, whatever it is, your body, your brain will use a nerve cluster, like will use its ability to interpret pattern and figure it out. So basically, they don't put cameras on blind people now. They put little sonar things on blind people. And how when we see the Matrix in the movies, or we see how Daredevil sees shit when it's raining, they start to get feedback from their sonar thingy that attaches to their tongue or their forehead. Now they're using their forehead. And he's like, why the forehead? Because you're not using your forehead for nothing else. So they use the forehead as the input device. The brain, after like 3 weeks, he said that 3 weeks is the sweet spot. You give somebody input from some sort of sensory for 3 weeks in some way, consistently, and you figure it out. Now you're not seeing what's going on. You're just experiencing it with a different set of eyes than what other people use. But yeah, he talked about how blind people can wing stuff into garbage cans and walk around, complicated mazes once they get accustomed to that input sensor. So, that was the immediate how you help somebody who's in need right now. But going forward, he says, think of something like a jet fighter's cockpit. You've got all this complicated stuff going on, and it's designed for our eyes to have to differentiate and decipher and monitor. He's like, what if you could take all that data and put it into basically it looks like a corset, like whatever something you wrap around your midsection, and then on the back part, so it looks kind of like one of the pressure garments that pilots will wear, but on your back it's got sensors. So what?
G-suit.
What?
G-suit.
Okay. Yeah.
G as in
kind of like a G-suit midsection. I'm with you. So, but that's the idea, is that you can take very complicated inputs, take them and put them into tactile, I guess, and then your body just becomes aware of the system. So when Gary goes to work, he'll just put on this like hat or jacket or wristband or glove or something, and he'll just know how the power plant is doing. He'll just know how everybody's computers are doing. Like you'll literally just be able to feel the status of a very complicated system. And
well, imagine it
potentially
for a pilot.
Yeah, like you're not monitoring stuff. You just kind of, if I feel a twinge over there, means maybe I should worry about pressure or whatever the hell pilots have to worry about.
Yeah, that's great. And that's a crazy thing that they can do that now. And that puts a question in the future of like, where does that go? You know what I mean? Like, how far does that, like, as your body gets older and starts degrading, and how much of that are they going to be able to take over with computers to the point, are we going to be like brains and
Wall-E?
jars with fucking sensors, you know?
Like Wall-E,
Well, in that,
right? Bunch of
he
fat
was-
people living in a spaceship.
at the end, the guy was like giving him a Q&A sort of, and he goes, okay, that's cool. So everybody knows you can replace pieces that people have lost, right? Or you can, it sounds like you can give people input to stuff. But he's like, you know, let's say like that guy from Star Trek, Geordi,
The visor?
guy who had like the visor that could
Reading Rainbow. That's his
like that could see more. So yeah. So if you could, he didn't say that, but you know, like the guy said, a lot of people speculate that you have like nerve clusters for eyes and nerve clusters for ears and whatever. So if you lose your ears and then you attach a microphone to the nerve cluster, that nerve cluster is like kind of interested in listening, so it's going to listen. But can you just take like I don't know, like a snake has a heat pit or whatever they're called, you know, the snake can tell when heat moves in front of it, so it knows what to kill. Like if you attach one of those to our brains, would we just know how to interpret that, or no, or would we be trying to turn that into an ear or an eye or whatever? And this guy said that yeah, blah blah blah, we don't know. But I think his answer was more towards the line of, hey, if we can plug in like whatever, our brain is going to figure it out. Like we have a brain that doesn't care about the inputs, it figures it out, and that's what's so magic and cool about it.
Well,
so yeah, like I don't think there is a sky's the limit. Not just replacing pieces that fall off, but like I want to be able to see the infrared spectrum. Like, okay, here, plug this into your third
the
eye.
nerves in our eyes go to a certain part of our brain that's already like set up to interpret that. So maybe it would be easier to see if you hooked it up to your eye nerves, which goes to your occipital.
No, this guy said that because like when you lose a thing, like let's say you lose your eyes, then the cluster that would have been your eye cluster just goes and does more to your other stuff.
Oh, like that part of your
So
brain
it'll, like,
reprograms
make
itself.
your-
That's true. That is neuro, and that's why like fucking blind
It
people
is.
can use sonar
So,
from a
like,
clicker
yeah,
and walk around a street
don't-
without a stick and stuff like that.
But I don't know if it's like so much that like you determine where it's going to go, or if it just naturally goes where like path least resistance, or if it's like a GAMP. They didn't get into that, but he basically said because they know that, for example, ears will turn into eyes, or they'll aid in the eyes if there's no ears to, they still want to do something. They'll do whatever. That he says that nature of them means that they're not just ear ones looking to be ears. They're not just eye ones looking to be eyes. So I think that was his answer. Like that makes him believe that, again, if you plugged in like radar to us or like sonar, like dolphin sonar, we would figure it out. Like we would just start seeing a different thing or hearing or whatever sonar is. Like we would just sonar things instead of, he's like, our brain would figure it out. It's like, I guess he was saying that the difference in the various brains are such that, it's not like there's a separate kind of brain for a dolphin and a separate kind of brain for a bat and a separate kind of brain for an earthworm or something that only sees underground. Like, we all have the same kind of brain. So basically whatever you plug into that brain, it's going to figure it out.
It would be cool to like see things in infrared and stuff, like you were saying, like for like astronomers, like plug like a telescope into their brain, and then they could look around and like switch views, like the Predator, between like infrared or whatever, and like look at things in different ways. Like, I don't know. I just think that'd be cool.
Just imagine the Me Too.
Well, again, it'll be that you'll have to implant anything. You'll be able to like stick your hand in. I'm seeing it more like you stick your hand in. Let's say like I don't know. You see some of these like sci-fi movies, and the thing will be piloted by sticking your hand in it instead of yanking on something. Like if that becomes the interface, you stick your hand in, and then you experience by, again, I don't know if it's like electric impulses or heat or stimulus, like something poking you or something, but whatever the interaction is, like if we figure out that by sticking our hand in there, that's, how like, is it R2D2 sticks in his little weird robot dick, or what cop Spike, right? Like, if our hand sticking it into a glove becomes our interface, then I think you could just walk up to a telescope, stick your hand in, and now you're experiencing sight like that. And then, okay, now I'm going to stick it into a radar system, and now I can experience, you know what I mean? Like you'll just, what's the word? Like you'll feel the telescope. It'll just, you know what I mean? Like you'll just understand it, if that's the word.
So maybe like a universal port or something that you can just plug whatever into.
That's what I'd expect. Yeah, exactly. Like USB, because it wouldn't be like, well, we want to spend all this time interfacing into a telescope, and then let's start over from scratch and spend all this time interfacing into a construction equipment. But instead of having to stand in a robot suit, yeah, you might just stick your hand into some kind of interface, like some gel. Maybe it'll be some cool like slime gel. What was that movie? Where you just
what was that movie?
Gary. Thanks for jumping in, Gary. But it could be something like that, just like enzymes or some weird shit.
I don't know, man. That's crazy. I didn't know that they could just because I knew that they would plug into your ear neurons or whatever, and then hook that to a microphone and let people hear for the first time, or plug into your eye neurons or whatever and hook a camera up and people can see. But I didn't know you could just hook it up to your forehead and be able to smell or something,
Yeah, he said the tongue is when they figured it out, because the tongue, obviously, it's super sensitive or whatever. So as soon as they figured out that people could learn from their tongue, then they went to the forehead, because they just wear a headband. And he's like, you're not using your forehead. I'm like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. You're really not using your forehead for shit. And it's a big piece of skin, for most people.
Imagine
pretty damn big.
Imagine for a fighter pilot, though, because now, like the F-35 and modern aircraft have sensors that literally you can look through the floor, right? With these helmet vision things, you can look down and see. You don't see anything, right? You see the ground through the sensors from the aircraft. So imagine if you can put that so that it's just your whole back and everything is sensing it, right? So you're flying along, enemy fighter starts getting sensed behind you, you'll start getting a hot spot or something in your back. Like, oh, okay, there's something back there.
Yeah, and somebody had made a comment in the comments of that video I watched that, yeah, they should put this in cars. Like, how hard would it be to put that into the driver's seat so that it gets a little warmer when there's somebody in your blind spot? You got that heater in a car anyway. I know.
Well, the fire thing, like the pilot at this point is the limiting factor, right? Like, because you can do more G's in the.
We're not flying around.
Yeah.
But you could wirelessly connect to it and fly it remotely with your brain, like you're there, dude. That would be next level.
Well, that's what they talked about. Like, they're like, and blah, blah, blah pilots, right? And then nobody got into a plane. It was a guy flying a drone. It's just that they incorporated all the things of a drone to this thing you wear around like a vest. And it's all on your back again. But, yeah, you experience all the data that the drone is given back. The feedback from the drone all gets interpreted into this pattern on your back. They indicated it with lights, but I don't know if it was heat or could have been vibration. But again, they said you wear that for a few weeks, and then you experience, it's sort of like the POV, when you fly a drone with POV versus looking at the drone from the ground. It's a different experience. They're like, once the person experiences that, or once they can experience the flight, like all the little nuance that like you can't get that from the joystick so much. Like if the joystick has some sort of resistance to, tell you that the thing's getting wind or whatever, like anyway, so in the future with the UAVs or whatever, these, you'll probably just sit in some kind of weird chair or wear some kind of jacket, and then along with whatever enhancements you'll be kind of in, I don't know what to call that. They'll have to come up with a new way of, it's not really virtual reality, it'll just be like virtual senses or something extra.
It seems to me though you'd have to grow up with this, right? Like you can't give an old person something like this and expect them to.
No, it sounds like as long they said it's just a thing. Like if you experience it long enough, you just figure it out. You don't really learn it as much as you you figure it out. Like if every day you were doing your job and they were poking you with various stimulus through your shirt, like eventually you wouldn't need to be told. They could just do those stimulus and you'd understand.
Yeah,
so I guess it's not something that you have to do. You just experience it. It happens.
Yeah, from what I've heard about it, it's more the longer you do it, the better it is, or the more exact it is. So, yeah, it seems like something that, like, I've seen stuff on people who just like click in their they it's almost like humming, but it's a humming that clicks, and they can walk around like blind sight. Yeah, blind people. Yeah,
you're talking about blind.
Yeah, and they walk around like somebody who's got sight, and they can recognize people and stuff like this, and that is just the same thing, right? They've just developed their hearing to that extent, and I think that might have actually been the same one that you were watching, G-Webs, or maybe an earlier one. But yeah, it was when they realized that people could visualize stuff with different senses. Because, like, we already know that what we think people look like is not what they really look like. Because it's only what our eyes show us.
I've sometimes thought, like you see red every time you see red, I see red every time I see red. But are we seeing the same color? Or is our brain...
Oh, hell no. Hell no.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no. Yeah, we're not. I mean, that's the thing, is everybody's a little bit different. And it can also be affected by, if people keep telling you it's red, you'll believe it's red, even though you might see it as
well. Orange. I mean, as long as you're able to, like, everyone identifies the red thing as red, and it shows to their brain the same way every time they see something red, so that, you know, like, it's red. Like, that's the color of the electromagnetic spectrum that it's giving off. But your experience of that color might be like green to me or something, you know?
Unless you got like a cone problem, then yeah, like you're going to see the same color the same way every time. That's just a nuance thing. Like right now, for me, you've got this weird, I don't know, some people would call it red, some people call it pink, some people would call it purple probably. You know, like the color is just a in-between color. Like that is different than purple. Somebody who's got like a physical problem where one time they look at something and it's red.
Yeah, I was thinking more crimson, but right? No, I'm just kidding.
But you know what I mean? Like that, we could always sit around disagreeing on what actual color that is, because it's just a weird color in between colors or something.
Yeah, exactly.
But I know what you're saying. Like if you're seeing it as green, then who cares? As long as we all see, as long as we're seeing consistently the same wavelength and we're identifying it generally the same, then I don't think it's like that movie They Live, where some of us are seeing skulls and shit, and the other.
So are we all going to end up with like Borg-like implants and shit, and, like these like drills in our hands that we can control and interface with stuff, and like, remove an eye and get your spectrum implant thing so you can.
Oh no, that I am 100% sure that is coming within 100 years. That people will have implanted optics, implanted home theater. They'll have all that stuff. It's already started. It's horrifying, but you know, look at all the people that are piercing their faces and shit nowadays. Do you think they're going to be scared about getting a microchip put in there?
I don't think them play their video game. It's not necessarily horrifying, though. It's like it could be used in a bad way, yes, but like, it could also be used in a way that like transforms the way that society functions and interacts with each other. It could be like a benevolent thing.
Oh fuck no, man! That's just part of Skynet taking over.
I mean, I agree with you, but I'm just saying, like, if this was able to be controlled from a way, you know, from like a human first kind of perspective, then you could see the potential for it anyway.
if we could control the true care that Democrats preach, it would be a benevolent thing. Unfortunately, we can't, and they don't actually believe any of it. So,
All right. Well, here's the thing. I started a project that is probably going to take some more time before I do the next portion. I'm waiting for something to cure at a certain point before I can do the next part. So basically waiting for paint to dry, let's say, to the right part. You know, it can't dry too much because it has to be kind of tacky before I do the next part, but I have to wait for it to get kind of tacky. So I can keep going. I'll be awake. I just drank a Monster before this. One of the reasons I decided to go live is because I'm going to be awake right now. I'll usually be sleepy at this time. But I don't need to keep it going just for the sake of keeping it going. So I know that Bob and Honda are in here. I don't know if Dead Horse are going to jump in if he's awake. We've got 14 people watching right now, and we've been streaming, it says, for 105 minutes. So I just figured I'd play host a little bit and see what people are thinking. I do need to go pee, so I'll be doing that. I'll come back and see what everybody's opinions are, if we'll keep going or if we'll go off air. But for a minute, I'll be gone, and I'll come back and see what everybody thinks.
when you come back, I want to talk to you about your CNC machine.
CNC machine.
Yeah. Well, I don't. It's kind of like a computer-controlled router.
Oh, is it the one that like hangs up on the wall against a board or whatever?
I'm not sure. I haven't seen it. But I'm, I'm just starting to do something different with my motorcycles and just kind of traveling around and going to local drag strips and racing for shits and giggles.
What kind of bike you got?
KZ 1000, old J model.
Okay. I had a 650.
I've run 1080, so it's fairly quick for a street bike.
I used to have a SV 650, if you know what that is.
SV?
Yeah, Suzuki.
Is that the twin? Was that the twin?
It's a V-twin, 650cc. It makes like 65, 70 horsepower, but it's pretty quick. It was a quick bike. And then I had a CBR 600 F4i, like a 2003 before that. I like the sport bikes better myself.
I kind of ride a sport bike because I ride a drag bike. It's basically flat bars, but it's originally it was like your typical 80s Japanese motorcycle. It's an 81, eh?
Oh yeah.
So the ironing board seat, big square gas.
So it's like it's a boy bicycle or motorcycle, but it dresses like a girl motorcycle.
Oh no! It dresses like an old
man between you.
But I've done a few things to it, so now the seat's all cut down for racing and shit, and it's got a 4-in-1 header on it and Can-Am filters, and I think I'm going to put smoothbore carbs on it right away. But it's fast, eh? Look, terrifyingly fast, actually.
So
but a lot of fun.
Dash right now is doing a deal with McDonald's where you can get a Big Mac delivered to your house for a penny. All I got to do is sign up for them. I got one earlier tonight because I didn't believe it.
Seriously?
Yeah. They're giving away a million Big Macs. Once a million's given away, they're not doing it anymore.
G-Webs, get on that, man. It's a free meat, man.
Like 1 penny fucking Big Mac.
Can you order like 10?
No, if you could have, I totally would have, dude. But no, they won't let you do that.
You want to have members for that system, and they can parlay that onto whatever they're going to do. So you know the Triple T, right?
Triple T.
Yeah.
You don't know that, but down here, that's I-10 is the road that goes from LA to Tallahassee, where the hell it goes in Florida. So as it goes through Arizona, it kind of makes like a S shape, and Tucson's kind of on one of the curves of the S. So it comes down through town on the south end of the Tucson, going east towards New Mexico, one of the last things in Tucson is Triple T Truck Stop. Truck Stop been there, I think, since like the 60s or 50s even. You know, it's like a I-10, pretty much, interstate going back and forth between the whole country. So it's a lot of people have known about Triple.
Yeah. It's an iconic truck
And
stop.
Bob stayed right near. Yeah, and like
RV
literally
park,
truck stop, like CD store. So Bob's staying in this truck stop nearby, or an RV park nearby. So now, first off, they've been 24/7 since I've lived here. So for decades, they've been 24/7, probably since the beginning of time. They switched and they closed at 9 p.m. And they had like stupid hours from like morning, 7 o'clock or something till 9 p.m. And then it was different hours like on Saturday and Sunday. It was just like a gross schedule. It's stupid. And so then they went back to 24 hours. They closed that whole back room, right? And that front part where you pay normally, like that part you don't pay anymore. Instead, it's just these big like heated buckets for like 3 different food delivery things. So they've totally changed the restaurant. And now this is the kind of truck stop where you get like a lot of portions, truck stop food like meatloaf and chicken and American food, like so I'm guessing they're just like suffering as far as a restaurant, but it looks like they're either desperate or they're kicking butt selling stuff delivery. I guess being right off the highway with all those industries and stuff nearby, I guess somebody like Uber picks it up and delivers it for a couple of bucks. Probably like 3 or 4 people at a time.
There's Grubhub, and then there's Well,
there was 3 of them there. Like I don't remember the name. I took a picture of them, but I was like, shit. At first I wouldn't. I was like, what the hell is all these coolers to here? But then I was like, oh wait a minute, these are like kind of like pizza warmers or something. So then I figured out, I think, that they just put the food in there and walk away, and then whoever it is, driver, runs in, grabs the food, and leaves, so that nobody has to wait for nothing. And I'm sure it all just gets paid for electronically, because it was like these heated cooler looking thingies, and then like what you'd have to like refill a delivery driver, like spoons and ketchup packets and stupid shit that they might need to pick up to accessorize some meal or whatever. And anyway, I was just surprised because like this whole section of the restaurant was like, you eat and then you'd come up and pay. And it was like one of these restaurants where you got like a billion types of gum, all kinds of candy. They'd almost always have like cookies that they made, and like big cookies and like a pack of 3 little cookies, like bananas. It wasn't really like a convenience store, but like the old timey, like, hey, let's suggestive sell as you're paying your bill, and all this stuff's super cheap, and it's a truck stop, and kind of the days before a convenience store. So it was just kind of like going into an old dime store or something. It was just kind of cool. And now all that shit's gone.
Yeah, well, probably they've sold it
Anyway.
and got a new owner.
No, I don't think they did. I think they're just, I don't know. Was it just the same guys there and
there's
everything?
places like that still around. Like there's a little bakery that I sometimes go to that has like, they make their own sausages and then make their own like bread and stuff, and they do these like pigs in a blanket that are all like pre-done and like heat them up for you when you order it, but they're baked and stuff. Oh man, they're so freaking good.
I got a butcher shop. I got a butcher shop just like 2 blocks away from me now that has the best like steaks and pork chops and bacon and sausages you could ever imagine, right? And it's like you walk down there and you get fresh freaking meat. That's great.
Where you at, Biker Bob?
No, I'm up in Brandon, Manitoba, Canada.
Oh, geez.
Well, I'm actually right on the border. I'm only about an hour from the U.S.
So you got all those Canadian gun laws to deal with, then?
Oh, yeah. Oh, horrible. Yeah.
You got like 12 SKSs or what?
No, I only got one. I got a VZ58. I got a SVT40. I got
So you
couple
got,
of four or five handguns, that kind of.
nice.
We can own that stuff. You just have to have a license, right? Yeah.
Yeah, there's certain things like short-barreled shotguns and stuff. That's not a thing there, you know.
No. Exactly. I got a 12-inch barrel 357 Magnum lever action that's got a stock on it. You know.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. It actually is.
Well, I've got a 20-inch barrel 357 lever gun, so.
Yeah. Well, I want to get a full-size lever gun just to, have one. My dad was big into semi-automatics, so everything I inherited from him was semi-automatic.
You know, like people talk bad about the Rossies, but I've had several Rossi products, and I actually have that's my 357 is the Rossi, and I really like it. Like,
Does it have a safety on the?
Yeah, that's the only.
That's why
Yeah.
people talk shit about it. The guns
Well,
themselves
yeah.
are fine. They for a while they're hit or miss with like their quality and their like fit, but they've cleaned that up over the last years. But that stupid safety is so fragile and unnecessary.
Yeah, it is a little fiddly bit. I just don't touch it. You know what I mean?
Well, I got mine's a Piata,
Yeah, but it's
so
still there, and that doesn't stop it from getting broke.
yeah.
What'd you say, Bob?
Well, mine's a Piata, so I don't have to worry about that. It's as accurate to the original as possible. We don't have that weird law. You guys have all these extra safety laws. It's like when you get a Tokarev,
No,
they put
there's
a safety on.
There's no law.
Yeah,
They
you
just
do.
did that. There was no law to do it. They do not.
No,
There's
I
no
don't know.
safety law. They just added that thing because they thought it was cool.
I don't know why they added it. I don't know why your little lever guns have an extra safety on them. It seems silly. But my Piata
No, they
doesn't
just
have
added
one.
them. Good. All right, so I'm changing the subject. So Harbor Freight. Anybody ever bought one of these 5,000 lumen LED shop lights? So basically a 4-foot shop light that's made out of
No.
LED.
How's it work?
I was there today buying paper. No, I'm asking if anybody has. I have not bought one. They're normally $30. And I think I seen one today for $29. Maybe that's what I did look at, damn it. And then I was like, well, I don't have $29, right? That's a lot of money. I do want one really bad because my lights are going out slowly. Like I'm losing one bulb at a time on my, one of these fluorescents, right? And I'm like, all right, I'm going to switch them with LEDs. Well, you can't just switch the bulbs. You got to switch out the ballast. It's a waste of time. Just buy a whole new fixture, right? So $30. Well, now they're on sale for $20. So I'm wondering if that's worth buying for $20. Seems like it's worth buying for $20, right? A fixture and an
Well, those LED
bulb
bulbs
for
last
$20.
forever.
Yeah,
That's
well,
what I'm thinking. And there's got to be a nice light.
I don't mind Harbor Freight, man. Like that's where I got my drill press was from there. And like,
No, I'm hit or miss with them. I mean, sometimes they're good. Like I say, I bought my sandpaper there. I'm fine with that. I had a drill press I bought there. I think I turned it on, used it once, and the thing broke. So I've had stuff that, I've, like you say, I've had like a grinder, I guess you could call like a stone that spins, like a grinding wheel, but it's a hand crank. No, but it's hand crank. So you just clamp it to a piece of wood or a bench or whatever, and it's got like a cam or some kind of gears, and you just start spinning this fucker with like a old-fashioned cast iron handle thing, and it just gets spinning because of the gears on it. It just gets spinning just like a wheel. Right. What?
I didn't say nothing.
I thought Bob said something. So anyway, it works just like a real electric one. I got it for Y2K though. This thing costs like $6, and it'll last forever. Like I'll be able to give that to my kids, right? Like that's the kind of stuff I like Harbor Freight for. But like I said, then I've had stuff that I buy in.
You bought it for Y2K.
Oh yeah, because it was literally it worked that good, dude. It was a way to like sharpen an axe or anything really. It was just grinding wheel. It's not like fine. It's like for grinding an axe or a shovel, maybe sharpen a shovel or a yard implement or something, maybe a machete. It's not like super fine, but for having again sharpening a shovel or an axe or some shit, I don't want to do that by the.
Remember how freaked out everybody was over Y2K?
Yeah,
I mean, I was a senior in high school, I think, that year. Yeah, that was my senior year. And I was living with my sister at the time, and all my buddies got a place downtown, like a hotel room for New Year's Eve. And, like, to this day, tell, like, epic stories about that night, and I wasn't allowed to go because my sister was so sure something was going to happen.
There was no need to be worried in the United States, because of course we could watch it not happen everywhere else, but up until that evening, I could understand somebody being upset or being concerned, I guess.
Yep, she wouldn't let me leave the house.
I'm just
Yeah, it's all good.
yeah, well, it's easy to have 2020 hindsight after the fact. We were just talking about, he was asking about Y2K. Anyway, it's easy to have 2020 hindsight and after nothing later, but at the time, people who knew what they were talking about were concerned with some of the various relays and just some of the hardwired shit from back in the 50s wasn't going to be able to do that, 2000 flip. And that could have, I mean, you know how fragile our infrastructure is. A couple of three or four consistent, like, knockdown, it could just cripple us. It wasn't that like anybody thought computers were going to blow up or nothing. It was just that there was some hardwired shit that it was not known, and it was definitely an effort. Like if nobody would have done nothing, I think stuff would have shut down. Like there was certainly things that would not have survived, and they switched out. And because people knew there were things that would not have survived that switch, that flip, that people did a lot of precaution. If that wouldn't have been done, it would have been a different turnout. But there was no way at the time. At least if it's like I say, it's easy to have no understanding of it and to blow it off like, oh, nothing happened. So obviously nothing happened. But back then, to know people that were in the infrastructure, like in the industry of our infrastructure, who were concerned, it would have been difficult. I think you would have been more understand. You would have been difficult to suggest all those people were idiots. Like when somebody's job is to understand infrastructure and they're like, oh yeah, there's like a 30% chance we're gonna end up in catastrophic.
Well, there were a lot of people worldwide, like running around saying like airplanes are gonna fall out of the sky and like all this other stuff's gonna happen and like
well, that's the thing. There are so many areas of expertise, and this was an unknown variable that affected, and that was being discovered. Like it was constantly being discovered how many potential aspects this had to it. So because there was so many variables, it was just, I believe, unwise to feel unconcerned. I mean, it's always, anybody can always say like, oh, the sky's falling, I'm never concerned about nothing. You're probably going to be just fine. But somebody said that in World War I happened. Somebody said that in World War II happened. Somebody was saying that in Hiroshima. You know what I mean? Like, there's also times when you get killed with that attitude. So some people run out of the way all the damn time unnecessarily. Or people die when they get smashed.
It did give us a really good movie, Office Space.
But, I mean, doesn't it remind you of what's going on with the global, dire predictions about global warming and global climate change and all that? Greta, whatever, screaming at the UN. And
okay, so
isn't that the same thing, though? It's exactly the same thing.
Do you know that girl is mentally challenged and that she was not just coached, but she was manipulated? She's not a complete.
Well, they've been wrong 100%. About like every prediction they've ever made. Like Al Gore telling us that all the polar bears would be dead in 5 years, and like I grant that things that we
There's more polar bears now.
Well, the things that humans do, the activities that we do, definitely have an effect on the planet. But when you blow out of proportion the effects that the things that we do are going to have on the planet, you create a whole class of people who don't believe anything you say. You get like that boy who cried wolf syndrome. So then you have these like climate deniers on one side, and then these like climate activists on the other side, and they're just butting heads like the anti-gunners and the gunners. It's just everyone's talking past each other. Nothing's actually getting done. I don't know.
Exactly. I mean, if you listen to sensible people, they'll say, yeah, we have to deal with the plastic pollution, but it's not North America that's doing it. It's China, it's Vietnam. We know what countries are putting most of that plastic in the ocean.
Well, and if we
that's really bad.
Stuff and reduce our emissions and recycle more as a country and do everything we can in America and start this huge program, then there's going to be other countries that have a competitive advantage because they don't have to follow all those laws. So they'll produce more of the goods, and that amount of trash, that amount of toxin in the environment or whatever is going to be produced.
All right, whatever. You guys can have this discussion anywhere else. So you don't get to have it unchallenged in here in my fucking show. You're going to do fucking nothing. Fucking do nothing. But don't fucking shit on people who want to do something. Now, if they're trying to abuse someone or manipulate someone, challenge them on it. But you don't get to just sit here and suggest that things change by a bunch of people doing whatever the status quo is, because that's not how fucking things change. So let's talk about China and how they got whole cities that don't even have gasoline because they're running around with electric cars. That didn't happen because China learned how to make electric cars out of their butt. They copied electric cars off of people over here who are making electric cars at a loss and challenging people who are going to give them shit because of whatever reasons that blah, 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 you're supposed to do things traditionally the old way, or we don't like the people who stand next to you when you petition to have a new type of vehicle or whatever. So to suggest that you don't do something in this country, the most powerful country on the planet, the most rich one, the second richest country on the planet, I think now, or maybe even third, but then the country that helped stop slavery, the country that helped champion women to be equal politically and everything else, the country that's helped with all kinds of challenge to the traditional way things are. You don't take this country and tell it to stifle and stop and do the easy route or what's been done. No, you fucking go ahead and you challenge the world on how they pollute and how they recycle and how they use. To suggest that China is going to do so much and blah, blah, blah. I'll challenge you anytime you want to talk about China. I watched a 2-hour documentary on China. I'm a fucking expert on China now. Those people that have gone from poverty in China to the cities, these massive cities in China, they know how to recycle.
Yeah.
They recycle
where they have nets around the buildings. They have nets around the buildings so they can recycle the bodies when they commit suicide from the work hours after work.
Yeah, here's another fucking platitude. Come with me with a platitude from this decade, man. And that's Japan, not China. Japan is fucking thriving. So to suggest that we're not going to do something here because somebody else is big,
China,
doing it
not
in their own
Japan.
way. Fuck all that.
Well, did you guys talk about that protester who got shot in Hong Kong?
And the people that got, or no, you're right. It might be China with the factories, but I still say that's bullshit. That's such propaganda. Read 1984 and tell me that you ain't sucking that 1984 news speak when you tell me how fucking China is, because I just watched a 2-hour documentary.
I know
talked about how awesome.
Damn well I am.
So
communism is bad.
Yeah. Yeah. So they.
Do you ever want any country that's going to tell you what to do every moment of your life? Because that's what China is. They have like social credit. You have a social credit. You insulted someone and they complained about it. You might not be able to travel on a train. Come on, man. That's crazy shit.
You're talking about the largest economy. You're talking about one of the largest populations on the planet. Certainly dwarfs ours. Just dwarfs ours. Billions to our 300 million. And then you're going to use a couple of examples to characterize, to marginalize an entire subsection of this whole planet's
Actually,
population. No way.
India.
So that might
India is
That might be
bigger.
part of
India has more people, and they are
I don't
more
care.
democratic.
I don't care.
And
That
they're
doesn't
not
mean that
terribly
China
democratic.
doesn't dwarf us. Doesn't matter. China still dwarfs us. And again, you're using a platitude from the olden days. And I watched a documentary from recently, and it doesn't matter because what you're talking about there is, again, like one little aspect of China when who gives a shit what China's doing? China is a follower at this point. They are going from poverty to what do we call this now? We're like first world, like we're technological age or the computer age or whatever the hell we're calling ourselves now. They're going from literally poverty, third world poverty, to this. They put it in this documentary I seen. They said that it took Europe, dumbass Europe, took like 130 years or longer. Like they took forever because they're stupid and they're lesser, right? So it took Europe forever to get to the technological age. It took us 80 years because we're better and we invented most of it and we're awesome and shit, right? Canada stood next to us and watched, so it took them 80 years. China is going to take 20 years because they're cheap. They already have it, it's all done already. They get to just do it. So they're just doing it.
Right.
So if you're going to suggest to us, knowing that's how the world is, you're going to suggest to us, let's do nothing because China doesn't do it. Fuck China. They follow us. So yeah, I'm going to petition, let's do stuff to challenge how people pollute and how we waste time and shit. I mean, what are we going to do? Roll over? What are we winning in manufacturing? No, we've given manufacturing to China. That's theirs. They have it. We haven't manufactured anything since the 50s for shit. So we're done in manufacturing. Do you think we got software? How long is that going to last? Didn't you just say something about India? Like, our population has less and less influence by the day. So I think that we can spend some effort in challenging the perceptions on stuff like environment and blah, blah, blah. Because as these countries catch up to where we are and figure out that that isn't the ultimate pinnacle, but figure out that they can go beyond, then hopefully we've given them some reason to give a shit about us in the future so that we're significant in some way with their massive economies and populations. And two, we've sent them in some direction that's useful and good for the planet. Because holy shit, if they do nothing, if they're completely oblivious to us, we're done, man. What are we going to do when they got 400 times the population and 10 times the economy?
I'm trying to suggest that we sit back and do nothing. You know what I mean? But I was trying to like lay out some of the problems that beset any effort. Needs to be an international type of thing. You know, it can't just be one country, otherwise, you know, it doesn't work. So yeah, I mean, how do you inspire these countries who might not have the same interests at heart to do things that are good for the future of everybody, you know?
Right, because they're going to look at what's good for our country. If we could make a bunch of money by dumping trash that other countries send us into the ocean because we don't have any laws about that, why wouldn't we do that? Because we're not thinking of the future, right? We're thinking of, like, we got a lot of hungry people right now. We need money. We need to flow. We need our economy to prosper. Just like America did in the 1870s and 80s, there was nobody cared about anything. You dumped whatever, wherever. I mean, as long as you're making money.
All right.
And that's the problem.
No way. No. Number one, fuck all that. 18 whatever. In the 18 whatevers, we didn't know the scale of the world and the balance of shit. We had no idea how much we were picking up off of it and how much we were dumping back onto it. We had no idea the extent of it and any of that. So no, it ain't just like the 18 whatevers. And to suggest that these countries that are scales of magnitude larger than us, to suggest that they don't have any future thought, is you're proving that you haven't paid attention to this, Bob, because they've literally built cities anticipating. They've changed their water with that giant dam and stuff. Like, they're communists and everything, but they knew that they've got a massive population that's growing, and it seems as though they figured out that they're about to do what they've just done over the last couple of 20 years. In 20 years, they understood where they were and where they could go, and they're doing it. So, yeah. So I don't know where you're getting this stuff about their population. I've certainly heard it before, but never from an official source, always through just people spouting it. So I'm going to challenge it just to challenge it. Like, I don't see a country the size of magnitude larger than us being oblivious to the planet they live on, dude. There's nothing that they do over there that I saw in this documentary that leads me to believe they don't have a plan, and
Well,
they
they
aren't
are
being
building
efficient.
cities and stuff.
They literally have
Look up how many coal-fired. Look up how many coal-fired power plants they have. They
didn't even talk about
put into operation in the last 10 years. Yeah, you know why? Because China is one of the greatest proponents of coal-fired power plants. They're burning coal, and China unfortunately has dirty coal. They have really poor quality coal, but you can burn it in power plants. It just pollutes a lot. That is why most of their major cities, I mean, they have like fatality days where pollution's bad, we're going to lose like a couple thousand people, but oh well.
Well, China's been spending billions and billions of dollars to keep their economy going, building cities that they don't need. I forget how many. There's several cities that they've built that every building has like thousands of apartments and stores and stuff and this and that with nobody in it, brand new build, like no one to rent it to or what. I mean, and people are buying these as like investment pieces, right? Like you can invest in this apartment building, right? So you have this apartment that you can then turn around and like rent to somebody else, but then there's no one to live there because they just built this city just to build a city. Like, to suggest that they're efficient with their central planning spending, I think is ludicrous. I mean, yeah, like they're making advances by standing on the backs of what people before them have done and copying it and doing, like their Chinese version of it. But their interests are their own. Like, their interest is to keep their economy going and to keep their people happy. And, like, if that means, dumping some extra crap into the, I mean, I'm just saying, like, we gotta get that point across to countries like China, like India, that have these huge populations that pale our population, like, and as they become industrialized, the amount of potential damage that can be done to the planet's like astronomical. We just need to like figure out a way to like stop that from happening, I guess. I mean, not stop them from industrializing, but all the damage.
Yeah, I agree. We, rather than stop them from advancing, let's encourage the advance to be more benevolent towards the environment. And I am an environmentalist. I mean, if we don't have an environment, I can't go like eat deer and cows and elk and moose and stuff. So,
well, I mean, no one can say like what the cumulative effect of mankind has been on the planet exactly so far or in the future even, but I think that only an idiot would look at the amount of crap that we've dumped into the ocean and into the air and, everything and say, oh, well, the world can take it. It'll be fine. Like somewhere in the middle there is the truth, Oh,
no. I mean, human beings pollute way too much. Like this whole thing with plastics. You know, all these plastic bags and that, you can actually turn them into fuel, into diesel fuel. It just boggles the mind that these are just being wasted and thrown away. I mean, I have a problem with using them, just recycle them. They turn into diesel fuel. It just kills me that we just think that this is some kind of trash. It's not. It's petroleum.
Well, I was reading an article about like what is the cheapest land today that you can buy that will be worth the most in the future. The answer was landfills, like old fucking landfills that have been trash and stuff. Like they sell them for pretty cheap. I mean, after they're done using them and done filling them up, the land, then you can buy that land for cheaper than you could other land because it's polluted, basically, right? Like you can't like farm there or whatever. Like it's not useful for a lot of things. But you go like, who knows how far down in the future, 100 years or something. Like suddenly there's a need for materials that you have in like large amounts underneath your feet,
Well, not only that, but I mean, they like all our landfills that are, not being used anymore. They stick a pipe in them and suck out the methane, and use that to run power plants and heat homes and stuff, right? Because it just comes up out of the ground. You either gotta suck it out and use it, or you gotta burn it off. Otherwise, it might explode. So. Makes sense to me, right? It's free fuel with all the, shit that's degrading into there.
I didn't know they did that. That's pretty smart, actually.
Well, there
is going to decay, and then it, like says, it creates methane, basically. So you've got some. It's not clean, right? It's gross, but most of the time they just burn it. But if they got, I guess, enough of it, then they'll pipe it somewhere and use it for like pop sand power or something.
Well, in some third world country, they make a toilet that basically burps out methane. Right, so it's a toilet for people to use, and it has a cap on it, and the gas that comes out of it they use to run their cook stoves.
That sounds awful.
Oh no, I mean it's gas. It's methane gas.
Where it came from? It's fine. It's just methane. It's fine.
Yeah, it's not going to be that much though. So then the landfills, that's the organic stuff rotting off or whatever and combusting, but then, or turning into gas or whatever. But then you've got the, all the other stuff, the metals, and I don't think the plastics exhaust gas, so they're just down there like Bob's saying, existing. I can't imagine that in the future we won't
break down.
I don't think it'll be physical. I think it'll be more like some sort of enzyme injected thing or something where you inject into a landfill some sort of stuff and then go in and pull it all out and it separates. You get all the batteries turned into whatever, all that stuff exists. So they'll, I don't know if you've ever seen how they get copper or aluminum or something out of dirt. I mean, it just looks like dirt, and they do a bunch of processes, and they get the 0.001% copper out of that dirt, and then eventually you get a big copper bar out of truckloads and truckloads and truckloads of dirt. So that's a massive waste of time. That's a massive waste of time to get that raw commodity. We're taking it and shoving it into a hole, and it stinks, and it's got poop on it or whatever. We vomited on it and pee on it. But aside from that, it's still a bunch of copper and aluminum and zinc and everything else that we've piled in this hole. It's got to be way easier to pull it out of there than it is to go find it new somewhere and create it, or whatever. So I'm thinking they'll, like, that property will be super valuable at some point. It's just a matter of how we break it down and sort it. But I'll bet you that's. I mean,
Well-
there's got to be people working on that constantly.
Yes, all the time. And that's true. I mean, that property is going to be, even if you put a digger in there like they have for mining, gold out of dirt or something like that, and you just dig up all that garbage, grind it all up, put it through a separator, sorter, you're going to get all kinds of really valuable products out of it. So, yeah,
Metals.
a win-win. Yeah.
Well, plus it's like a time capsule too, right? Like if you go like dig up like a pile of trash from 100 years ago, like there's stuff in it that you won't find today,
Well, and I mean, isn't that what archaeologists do? I mean, their biggest thing is digging up trash piles.
All right, well, we took it all around everywhere today. So it's now midnight. I think we started at 9-ish. So does it tell me anywhere how long we've been going?
Yeah,
Started
it's 2
streaming
o'clock
2 hours
here.
ago. That doesn't seem.
Well,
I'm
it's
gonna
2 in the
refresh
morning
YouTube
here.
and
I'm
see if it'll
pretty
say.
sure that's about 2 hours.
Still says 2 hours, but I think it's been more than 2 hours. If I go backwards here, it says 2:25. So anyhow, we've got 12 people watching, and more thumbs up than that. So thanks for the 100% plus ratio on the thumbs up. Squeaked by again this month, thanks to Patreon supporters, able to stay in the business, and people that buy stuff from the store. Thank you very much. Able to be here. So that's one of the reasons I wanted to go live here. I wanted to talk about that conversation I had with Brandon's friend Chris earlier. Chris, yeah, and then kind of get some of that out. I did invite Clover, and I'm still going to do something with Clover Tack whenever he gets a chance. And it might not be late night. I don't know. I might move the show to noon now that it's not 115 during the day here. It's a lot easier to do something at noon. So I might move the show to noon. I have a spiral notebook here that Clover gave me that's, I guess I could go through and do some kind of tabs or something to get a better idea of how many topics in here. But as I was listening to the Gun Rights Policy Conference and the AmCon, I made notes about the events themselves, not the actual speakers or anything or the content, although there's lots of stuff to talk about with those, but just the event itself. And since they haven't really listened to me in the past, I'm just going to do shows based on my observations or whatever, and throw those out there to whatever, just to make shows about it. So that'll scratch my itch, and that'll give people some new content that you're not going to get anywhere else, because nobody else went to those shows, and nobody else scrutinized them. Everybody else is just going over there to pat everybody on the back. And I want to see us get rid of the NFA. I want to see us work together and not just blah blah blah. Somebody said it great earlier today. It might have been Maj or Kevin or somebody. Maybe it was Tony. I don't know. Somebody with a good head on their shoulders said something to the effect of, "We don't need to we don't need unity. We just need collaboration," or something to that effect. We don't need to all be in lockstep for damn sure. We don't need to all be friends with each other. As long as we can, maybe it was Edgar. We all just need to be aware of the fight and pull in the same direction when necessary. And I think we actually are stronger and better when we've got individuals from different areas of the world, different interests, different everything, that are pulling in the same direction. And I was trying to come up with this one. It's in my notes somewhere. You've got all these different points. Instead of having one big point, we have lots of little points out there, lots of little individual efforts, individual areas. What?
You just need unity.
What? No, I don't.
Unity.
That's the opposite. Yeah,
You
I'm
need to
saying
be
no. I
united.
think we don't need that.
Oh. All right. Sorry.
Just saying things. We got or what? Yeah, no, I'm saying instead of that, because that's a thing to strive for, but it's not an obtainable goal, right? It's not a dream, but it's a very difficult thing to get everyone to agree on anything, really. I think what the idea was instead of unity, have collaboration or some word similar to that. People willing to work together, but they don't have to be united to
See,
do it. Maybe
when you were saying that, I was thinking
I'm not-
like everyone's got their own little point, their own little thing, and I'm thinking like a picture, right? A picture is made of 1,000 pixels, and each pixel doesn't really mean anything by itself, but when you stand back and look at it all together, you can see the picture.
That's interesting. Actually, I wasn't thinking of it quite that way. What I was trying to get at was you've got all these individuals, these individual efforts, these individual directions or interests, and instead of trying to be one unified point, by having a bunch of different ones, what you've got is traction. So I think same thing. We've got more anchor, we've got more. So as long as we're all working the same way, I don't know, I think we got more reach. I don't know, I'm still developing all that. Anyway, I've got a lot of notes from my experience there. And like I said, I'm going to do some of these shows to do that. I've got the project coming up, the Almanac, which I've been slowly testing some feedback from Patreon and from the newsletter and from others. And we'll be rolling that out sooner than later. It'll be a project here to get something I've been working on for years now, finally to exist. And we'll do a crowdfunding project just to get the price down as much as possible so that we can try to do as many of these, the whole thing, you buy more, you get them cheaper. So we're going to do a crowdfunding thing for just 21 days and try to effort that and bring these things to life. So that'll be a project for the month of October. This show will help with that, I suppose, and kind of monitor that progress. This is our 30th something, I think 30th project on Indiegogo, but 35th or something altogether, various projects. Using the various platforms. I'm hoping to be able to share this one with others because, again, one of my frustrations with AmCon was the bland, plain vanilla, outdated information on crowdfunding. And in 2019, we've just been talking about being one of the wealthier countries on the planet. Why should we be worried about funding? It just seems like a ridiculous thing to be worried about when the opposite side has a Bloomberg. We should be able to, what was that? We should be able to worry less about the funding. All right, take it easy, Bob. It's weird in the chamber. You get this weird Biden. It's like Biden comes up behind you and whispers.
Grabs you by the shoulders and tells you a secret in your ear.
All right. Well, so anyhow, so I got a bunch of stuff to chat about. We'll chat about that stuff. We'll quit holding punches back, and we'll just chat about guns again as I get ready to build the Almanac up. That got me all my juices flowing. I don't know if you've ever published anything before, Honda.
No, not published.
Yeah, try.
I've like written in blogs and stuff like that, but
yeah. See, I don't like reading, so I'll write if I have to. Back in the olden days of the internet, before YouTube, I wrote all the time because you had to. It was all there was. So I did because I had to, kind of thing. And somewhere I probably have a bunch of shit written that I could go exploit. But I don't really like reading, so I don't write that much anymore. And whatever. I'm interested in our history. It's super difficult to discover it. It's just all over the place. You have to seek it out for every person, every organization, every law. everything is starting from zero pretty much. You can find a couple of sources, your Wikipedia, you find a couple of 3 or 4 sources out there that might have information on a lot of what you're looking for, but never, even Wikipedia, nothing has ultimate information on everything. We don't have a, whatever that thing's called in Hitchhiker's Guide. We don't have like a galactic reference or something that tells us what we need to know about our Second Amendment history. So for me, it's been a interesting challenge, but also, I guess, a passion to try to figure it all out because it's so hard to find. And then I put it on websites, which I might as well have wadded it up on a piece of paper and thrown it in a corner of my garage, because nobody goes on the internet to look for that stuff really except for me. So I've had it on a website for a long time. And that's where I've been kind of considering my notes as I go along, finding stuff, discovering new people, new organizations, trying to keep some track of it all. I put it on this website. Websites for me are nice because they're basically giant notepads, right? You can organize them however you want, and you can, I guess that's the main thing, is you can organize all this information as it grows, as it accumulates, and just keep track of it. But it's huge, and nobody in their right mind is going to go search for anything on there. Maybe it's useful for people. More than likely, it's not.
I think you're the only person that I know who says that they view like creating a website as like having a notebook.
I've got 350 of them. I've been doing them. I've had 600. I've gotten rid of a bunch. I had to sell bunches of them, but I've never bought them just to own them. I mean, I do end up having accumulated them because I don't have the time or the resources to play with them all. But now I bought every single one because I've had an idea for them. But I really, really enjoy finding data and then making it interesting and useful and then presenting it. It's just interesting and fun. I really think the internet is it's a dissemination, it's a democratization of the dissemination of information. And I enjoy that. Sometimes when I first started, it was for the lakes down here in southern Arizona. Like, you don't realize it, Arizona has a lot of lakes. And there's a lot, all the lakes are either, they're all dams, but they're like because of agriculture or because of maybe a little area needed them for their water. So they're pretty much all, for use or whatever. But anyway, they're here and there, and the ones in southern Arizona near the Mexican border and just out in the middle of nowhere just didn't get much play on the internet back in the 90s. There was a couple of mentions of the big lakes up by Phoenix where everybody does like the competition fishing and water skiing and stuff, really big man-made lakes that everybody knew about. But down here, these little tiny lakes that some people were fishing them, but they were just not used very much. There was nothing about them. So it was just interesting to go find the information, present it, and then have it online. And for a long time, that's all there was. So I was like the source of information for the lakes in southern Arizona. And that was really neat. That was when this is the 90s. Mm-hmm. So the internet was small back then. As the internet gets bigger, other people do stuff. We expand it and everything. So that just, it's always been an interesting aspect of this electronic thing, that you can present stuff to people and it can be appreciated. It can be useful. So knowing that, and having that interest, I get to the future now, and I've had experience with digging up stuff like the Saturday Night Special information. I didn't seek that out. I sat there one day on a Thursday, and I was doing gun reviews like a schmo because I didn't have nothing else to do. We were, this was back in like 2012. It was still cool to do gun reviews. I didn't realize that it was detrimental to the culture. So I was doing my stupid gear review, a gun review, and I was about to do a review of a shitty gun. I was like, this gun's shitty. I don't like this gun. And then that's one of the things that woke me. That's how I got woke. I was like, why am I going to do a review of a gun that's shitty? Like, why am I going to say a gun is shitty? Where am I getting off saying a gun's shitty? And how is that helping the world for me to say a gun's shitty? Why don't I look at it from this gun's point of view? Like, they didn't make this gun to be shitty. Why did they make this gun? Like, those are the kind of questions I had as I was literally about to make a review ragging on this gun. And I was like, I don't need to do this. I can change this. So I'm going to go research this. And I came up for air 3 days later, and I had learned all this information about the Saturday Night Specials, summing it all up. One lady, a long, long time ago, an anti really, went out and did actual investigative journalism. She went out and talked to people and learned stuff, and even though she was anti, she presented it honestly and a little bit biased, but honestly. And then a Nightline or Dateline or something on PBS saw that, or no, the first thing was a doctor wrote a paper and basically just copied the shit out of her paper, like just highlighted pieces of it, copied and pasted, referenced it, basically just redid her paper, added a bunch of connotation and suggestion that guns are bad. And then something, like I say, PBS, some show also happened, and because of news, they decided to do this PBS thing, and they cited this one article. And literally everything else I found online cited those three sources. So when three sources are cited by everybody, and those three sources ultimately are just sourced, are all citing one source, that means that everything out there is being disseminated by one lady's efforts, like a long time ago, and she was an anti. And literally everything I found online about Saturday Night Specials was that. And I'm like, that is the most effed up shit ever, right? Like everything you can literally find pre me going out there and looking, because there was some other stuff. There was some valid info, but it was by people who did not know what they were doing. So it was effectively hidden online. It wasn't that the internet was trying to stifle it or blah, blah, blah. They just didn't know what they were doing, and they were ineffective at getting their information on the internet so that it could be found. So it was ineffectively not there. And that got me to thinking, what the hell am I doing, right? Why aren't I using my skill of doing stuff on the internet and having fun with it, enjoying that, with something useful? So that's when I started changing the whole gun websites and everything. Our focus was no longer on just like blah, 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 new sites or blah, 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 new model of blah, blah, blah. But instead, let's dig in and let's look at the Second Amendment and the community that, these people are like, I had this conversation before, and we talked about it before, this guy's marginalizing us. You gun owners are obsessed with your fucking guns and, whatever it is, you're either fixated on the phallic nature of it, or you just don't care about the violence that they create. They've got this like idea of us. Well, that's all created because we don't ever share what we're all about. And blah, 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 buy a new thing, or blah, 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 put a new trigger on your blah, blah, blah. That doesn't do nothing for anybody to actually be interested. That just reinforces the stereotype that we're obsessed with with the details of our killing machines or whatever. When, like I say, there's all kinds of other stuff to be interested in. So anyway, I think I started talking about the almanac here. That's what the almanac is, an effort is to change all that, to again take data and present it in a different way. After going to all these gun shops and seeing the amount of lack of interest in gun shops anymore, and the gun shops, one of the coolest gun shops I visited ever was in San Antonio, and from what I understand, that guy sold, and nobody was going to buy his gun shop. It's the kind of gun shop where there's just stuff squirreled away in every nook and cranny, like from floor to ceiling is product and sights and trigger pieces and every little like gunsmithing part that's ever come in, and maybe he bought 2 or got 3 accidentally, or you know what I mean? Like there's just like little pieces, probably anything you could ever think of. You could go in there, and maybe somebody in that store has been around long enough to know where it is, and just an interesting store to be in. And when he sold it, like nobody was interested in buying it. So that's the world we live in, where gun shops are only, because of legislation, the only place we can do business in these pieces of property. And with the internet and just the nature of people wanting to get a good deal and not being interested, and potentially, the influence of media telling us that blah, blah, blah is the best place to buy your thing with a blah, blah discount code and blah, blah, blah. It's just changed the industry. You don't go to your gun shop to learn anymore. You don't go to your gun shop with respect. You go to your gun shop with demands and, with the, like, you better fear the customer out.
I don't see how a lot of the gun shops are surviving these days, honestly, because when I go to my gun shop, because I go to one, like I don't go to every gun shop around, but I try to support my gun shop that's near me, and I've watched them grow over the years, and I think they're the exception to the rule. But like I go there and buy a few boxes of ammo when I'm there, or if I'm like if I do a transfer, like I make sure to, like buy ammo from them and use their range and pay the fees and, do the little things that give them the money that keeps them going, but also gives me, like I'm not getting nothing out of it. I'm not just giving it to them, I don't know. But like I have bought guns from them before, but I do buy guns online too. And I've been kind of thinking about the online gun thing. And while you do save a couple of bucks, you might end up it might end up screwing us over in the future, because a lot of the gun shops that we take for granted won't be there anymore because we've cut out their entire profit margin and given it all to a few like Walmart type gun companies, like Kentucky Gun Company or Palmetto State Armory or like a few others that just have such incredibly high sales compared to everybody else because they offer things so cheap that they're going to cut.
Well, that's the kind of stuff that I'm interrupting you, but that's the kind of stuff that I'd like to explore. And now it's kind of tough in the middle of the night. I'm just at this point blabbing or whatever. But yeah, so that situation though is hardly new. And I guess, I was kind of got just sidetracked or whatever from trying to explain this whole concept of the almanac and the daily gun show. And when I say I'm out of 2A, like trying to get people to rally or whatever, like it's just going to be less and less whatever. I'm trying to explain this, but the this concept of the gun shop suffering and the online stores. Why can't we have both? Like, we want to grow our numbers. There's lots of stuff we're going to end up talking about over the weeks and months, I guess. We can chat about here in a second, I guess, because we'll end up chatting about it. So I'm about to say it, but Alan Gottlieb's son, Andrew Gottlieb, got up and had a conversation during, I think it was like the how do we grow the industry or how do we grow the gun community kind of segment of the Gun Rights Policy Conference. And his portion was talking about 2A gaming or gaming with interest in 2A or something. So with this idea that we want to grow the community, and then of course we always get told that we need to worry about females and we need to be inclusive by the same people that are there year after year after year. So as we grow this community, why can't we will need both the online stores and the gun shops, right? At least ideally, we're going to need both, because let's say we get the great deals online, wholesaling, and police department does their buyback or whatever. Not buyback, that's a bad word. What do they call it when the department sells their guns and gets new? Like the upgrade. Not buyback. Upgrade.
What is the word?
Buybacks. Upgrade.
So, gosh darn it, what's the word? I forget too.
Upgrade, I think. Right?
Police surplus.
But whatever. Like,
surplus.
so I'm guessing like
yeah, okay.
Yeah. But whatever, so let's say you have your online shops to provide your great deals, maybe your ammo deals or distribution or something. But then I guess what I'm getting at is gun shops, I can't tell gun shops what to do, but I can suggest, like, why don't they open their minds a little bit, think outside of the box, and quit trying to do what their grandpa's gun shop did. I was listening to a thing about museums bitching and moaning because people won't go to their gun shops. And then they also bitch and moan that collectors groups don't go to the museum. Sorry, the people don't go to their museums. So it's similar though. It's like, hey, people aren't going to your gun shop. Quit doing what gun shops used to do and do whatever gun shops are going to do next. And then people will go to your gun shop, right? Like, provide something that people need, and then boom, you're done. So maybe it's having like a Wednesday we come here and talk about CCW, and on Friday we talk about hunting, and then another day we talk about Second Amendment. You know what I mean? Like, maybe you're part of the community. Maybe your gun shop goes to the range once in a while. Maybe your gun shop does cleanups at the outdoor shooting area or at the side of the road somewhere where there's a sign that gets seen and you guys are out there with your t-shirts or something on Saturday mornings or on Friday afternoons when people are commuting. Like, maybe a gun shop is a different thing in the future. Maybe a gun shop is a way for people to get together and do something like an Every Second Matters campaign where every once, like a second day of the month, everybody comes to the gun shop and you roll up your sleeves, you figure out what's going on, you make your phone calls, you make your plan of attack for the month, you figure out which political candidates need talking to and which ones need a pat on the back, and maybe you figure out what state over next door neighbors need help, where you have influence, and maybe everybody does things in a different way. And that's one of my complaints with the AMCON and Gun Rights Policy Conference. One of the reasons I'm going to continue to do this show is I'm going to throw out ideas like that. Like, maybe we change this frickin' playing field already. Maybe we think like a bunch of capitalists and entrepreneurs, and we start thinking about how do we satisfy the needs of individuals instead of trying to manipulate individuals to needing something that we can supply, or more likely what our grandpas used to supply through our brick and mortar fucking buildings, when we're competing with what people want to do, which is buy their shit online.
That's one thing that my gun shop that I go to did, was they built a shooting range on top of everything, right? So now you can go there, you can look at a gun, you can rent a gun, you can buy a gun, you can have an FFL transfer, you can meet, well, in Colorado there's no person-to-person transfers without an FFL, so you can, like, if I'm buying a gun from you, we both live in Colorado, we got to go to the gun store to do it. Like, they do that kind of stuff. So they have all these different services, and then on top of that, they're teaching CCW classes and hunter safety classes and, like, pistol shooting classes, and, you know, like, all these different things that they're doing on top of just selling guns. You're right, they have expanded. They're not doing what their grandparents did, and that's one reason why that particular gun shop, Triple J Armory, has grown like they have. Like, when I first started going to the guy, he was in his garage. Like, the guy lived down the street from me, you know, like a couple blocks away, and that's how I found him, because I was just getting an online gun transferred, and I saw that they did FFL transfers, and ended up going there, and they were, you know, building AKs in the garage when I stopped by. It was pretty cool. And, like, I've known the guy for since then, you know, like, I go to him every time I need something for a gun. That's where I go. So
a lot of shops will start, or at least a lot of shops will have that, what's the word, trajectory or whatever. Like, well, not everyone achieves all that, but a lot of them start that way, I think. Not all of them, but a lot of them start that way. They don't all have, like, the opportunity and circumstances to get that far. But yeah, you're right that they're doing stuff differently than their grandpas did or whatever, and that they are hustling, so they've gotten accomplished a lot or whatever. And I'm not shitting on nobody, but I guess what I'm saying is that's the same old hustle. Gun CCW classes, hunter safety, that's all comfortable inside the realm of what a gun shop does. If you sat down and talked to a let me counsel your gun shop counselor or coach or whatever, it's the kind of stuff he's going to tell you. I guess I'm thinking, like, again, I'm thinking of a couple of things here, and one of my motivations is how to get people aware of what we're doing, and by being like we used to be doesn't, you know, we don't by nature as gun owners share nothing. So duplicating what old gun shops did, we don't share nothing. Except maybe we share a little bit with each other online, and then we get all mad when they shut us down or whatever. So imagine if gun shops had a little kiosk where something like I don't know, I want to say a contest, but maybe some sort of participatory collaboration networking thing was happening, and maybe that became a network that gun owners use to communicate, share. Not a Facebook, but a gun book or a gun shop, or, you know what I'm saying, like some sort of a thing. What if gun shops were the hub of some sort of a network of communication or whatever? So that's, I guess, what I'm saying, trying to say, like, just throwing, again, not like every idea I come up with is going to work for every gun shop or anything, or any of these ideas are even any good. I'm just trying to use examples of stuff that's outside the typical, you know, oh, maybe you have like a laser target thing in the back, or maybe you offer, you know, range visits.
I was just saying that, like, not everywhere has places like that where they can go and rent a gun and shoot a gun and buy a gun and, like, have everything a one-stop shop for guns, right? You can get your ammo there, you can get everything there. If places like that go away, what options do we have left? So what I'm saying is, like, do what you can to support them. You know, when you go in, don't just peruse and leave. Like, maybe give, you know, you got $20 that you can spend. You need some 9mm ammo. Buy some 9mm ammo from them. You know, don't go to Walmart. Well, not that you can anymore, but you know, like little stuff like that. Like that goes a long way to support businesses like that. And you know, just using them for an FFL transfer fee, you know, twice a year when you buy your whatever new whiz bang gun that you like to get for a cheaper price because you buy it online. Like that's really screwing them out of their piece of the pie potentially, you know. And if you do that enough to those places, they won't be around.
We're going right back to shaming the customer for doing whatever's in their best interest, and that's number one, ineffective because nobody wants to do. There's very little interest in doing things that are against your self-interest. But it's unnecessary. It's a dilemma that we are creating and pushing on each other when we don't need to. So I guess what I'm suggesting is, again, I'm not shitting on gun shops that are doing whatever in the gun realm to expand their abilities, features, like services, you know, their reach or whatever. But I'm saying let's challenge each other. Let's challenge the industry. Let's challenge our community to put more burden on gun shops, to tell gun shops, if you want people to come here for more than just the FFL transfer, which is either, you know, required by law or mandatory or whatever, like unless people are forced to come here, you know, as capitalists, as entrepreneurs, as struggling business owners, think about the customer. What does the customer not know that they can't live without, right? Like, let's think outside the box. Let's get ourselves into gun shops voluntarily because we can't get enough, because we can't do something elsewhere. And that's my challenge, is like, how do we come up with something there, shop it around, get it out there, and get that kind of conversation going so that we can challenge ourselves. Again, one of my bitches is my consistent bitches from the AmCon for sure, but also from gun rights policy, is that the tendency, and it's not like it's anybody's malice, it's just that they're not interested in challenging anybody, but they basically were like, hey, let's succeed by doing the absolute middle. Like we know that we can't succeed by hitting a home run every time, and we know that we can't succeed by whatever the opposite of a home run is every time, like losing, whatever, striking out every time. I don't know sports. So we'll be satisfied with second base every time. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we know we can't always win. We never want to always lose. So let's just shoot for the middle and everybody's happy. Well, I say screw that, because I don't think we need to do that anymore. That works when you're trying to sell shoes and you don't control the other people selling shoes. That works when you're trying to sell a new kind of belt to a population of people that don't wear belts, right? Because you are trying to manipulate. But I don't think you need to use those tactics on ourselves. We're allies, right? And we have a bunch of resources that those tactics require we pit each other against ourselves. And I'm saying a bunch of words, but it's like, if we as individual content creators, for example, or gun shops or whatever, but like two entities in the gun community, if we both want to succeed, we're encouraged to look at the resources as a pie that we have to slice. When I believe we have the opportunity to think outside the box, and two entities in the gun community can instead think of resources like ingredients, and we can just create cakes. We just keep baking cakes. If we need more audience, let's expand and create more audience. Once we've created audience, let's do something with that audience, and let's not think of that audience that actually came here because they give a shit. Let's not treat them like a bunch of babies that need to be babied. Let's treat them like adults and give them some responsibility. Let's challenge the audience. And I forget where I heard it anymore, but I wish I could give credit to whoever the credit's due. Somebody said, you don't micromanage volunteers. You don't tell a bunch of people who volunteer to help, like, here's how I want you to put out the fire, right? Don't tell them that. You say, help us get the fire out. And then once the fire is out, you go, thank you for putting out the fire, right? So why are we as a community trying to figure out ways to micromanage people who don't want to be micromanaged and look for ways to not even be managed? So why don't we look at ourselves as a bunch of capable people who are able and looking for challenge. And then let's say get gun shops involved, not as pawns that just have to pay us, but instead as vital resources in this whole thing. And let's change this game. Let's, instead of moping around like a bunch of punks that like, oh, we can't get success on the internet because of the platforms are against our property and our position politically, and it's so frustrating. And so we go to the platforms where it's easy and where the numbers are bullshit, so we can feel an over accomplishment for doing nothing and talk to ourselves. And fuck that shit. Like, fuck all that. Like, we got gun shops in every single city of every single state. We got gun owners everywhere. The NRA is failing. We've got so much potential, so much resources. We could change this. We could. We have the infrastructure. We have people that are truly dedicated to a common interest in freedom and fucking firearms that represent that individual freedom. And I'll fucking be damned if I'm just gonna sit around for another fucking year, fucking asking these people to fucking work together. I'm gonna start going rogue and doing this show and fucking calling people out for being a bunch of wusses and sellouts and shit. But mostly just offer suggestions. I'm not necessarily looking to call people out unless they suck really bad.
Burn the internet. Burn it. Not literally, I'm just saying.
No, so my idea is to create something that inspires people, and acknowledges the shoulders we stand on, that gives people some inspiration on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis. Try to put something together that's a little bit different. That's something that you can pick up and get a little inspiration, a little giggle out of it once in a while, maybe. A little direction, a little awareness. When someone tries to tell you that we're not inclusive, you can say, fuck you. We've had the Pink Pistols, for example, for 19 years. You're going to tell me that our culture, our community, our industry is not inclusive? There's new people that are coming along and suggesting that we haven't yet, or we don't. They're just not aware of the people who they're standing on the shoulders of. The same as that guy I was talking to today was going to tell us that so much more violent here and there, while he ignores the level of violence in the country with one of the largest international borders, like 100 miles south of me. So, you know what I mean? Like, these people are going to suggest that some people in the gun community are going to suggest that, we don't do enough, or we haven't yet. And yeah, we did. We did it a long time ago. You just don't remember. So the almanac is designed to give credit where credit's due, to acknowledge as many people as I can, to acknowledge the organizations where they came from. And instead of having any advertising or anything, it's going to focus on mostly gun shops and museums, not gun shops, museums, and a couple of gun shows, and then offer schedules for all the stuff that is just about impossible to keep track of, the different industry events, the different events. I've included events for the media, of course, 2A media events like KD's training event and AmCon. Even though I bitch about it, it's one of the only things we've got to join us and keep us going together. Hopefully they'll get their shit together and challenge us one of these years. But to keep track of those kind of things.
Dude, you've compiled a lot of information, and I think once you're done, it would be pretty easy. Well, not easy, but it would be a lot easier than it would be from starting from scratch to take all that and put it into a book too.
Well, dude, that's what we're talking about. So I'll try screen sharing here.
Well, I thought you were talking about it, that online
Cowboys
thing.
And lawmen and outlaws and stuff back in the day. All kinds of stuff was exaggerated, and there was no radios and police cars, so you could drive across state lines and not be in jurisdiction anymore. So, a time when there was no TV yet, there was just barely radio, and
that's you. Yeah, that's you. Now, am I screen sharing? Yeah. All right. So let's see if I can find something over here. Shit, I don't know what it is. Are you back yet, or are you gone? Did you spin out there? Oh, you know what? I might not be able to see it. Are you back, or what happened to you, Honda?
I hit the wrong button and I started playing sound, and then I realized I was doing it, and I muted myself, and then I didn't realize I'm getting tired. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no worries. So I don't know if I can find it from here. Oh wait, maybe I can get it from my email because I switched accounts. But I have the almanac. Was what I'm talking about. The almanac. You know what a farmer's almanac is?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's similar, except it's not a farmer's almanac. Obviously, it's a shooter's almanac. So it's designed to have info and what's the word? Timelines and schedules. That's what I think I was looking for. So if I click this and then I click this, I think I can actually watch the damn video. Is it working now? Can you see the video?
It's saying you're having connectivity issues.
Ugh.
Oh, no, now it's working.
Okay, I probably have too many windows open. So it's not playing sound yet. So this sounds pretty low. I'll have to turn this up.
Values as gun owners have always brought us to
Is it working now, though?
Yes.
Can you hear it?
To defend our position. Hi, I'd like to introduce you to our Shooter's Almanac, a new way to explore our Second Amendment history. Our shared values as gun owners have always brought us together. Unfortunately, the persistent need to defend our positions and our property has also united us. Our goal with gun websites since 2004 has been to share our Second Amendment community and gun culture with everyone. Originally with websites and forums and videos, we participated in live conversations and encouraged others along the way to be part of our community and the new media. After 15 years of watching trends, experiencing waves of attack, and seeing fellow Second Amendment advocates' level of interest rise and fall, it's apparent that apathy and lack of motivation might be the two worst adversaries of our Second Amendment. No one will ever take our Second away, but the lack of will or interest in supporting the freedom that it provides are always a risk. So, the Shooter's Almanac is designed to do something new in a different way. It's created to inspire, inform, and motivate the new individuals. Now, 2020, after 3 years of preparation, we hope the Almanac can bring awareness of our Second history and credit to those shoulders who stand out there. The Almanac will offer daily, weekly, monthly inspiration and direction. No advertising. Instead, we focus on organizations, individuals, museums, gun shows, and other elements of our gun community. We've accumulated timelines, significant dates, industry events, cartoons, gun show calendars, quizzes, podcast schedules, and more. We aim to offer a well-rounded, timeless experience for the dedicated longtime gun owner and the novice. Someone creating content, someone participating in two-way conversation, anyone who's attempting to open people's minds about guns should all find something of value for Shooter's Almanac. That is our challenge. Join the team. Grab a copy. Grab a few extras to gift. Be part of the creation of our newest project. Thank you for bringing new two-way projects to life.
I don't know, so you can kind of see it there. But yeah, I'm trying to put together a whole bunch of shit, like I say, and then I don't know, you can kind of see it the one screen there, but the back of it is designed so that gun shops can have them and put like their stamp on there, like brought to you by this gun shop kind of thing.
Yeah, that's cool, man. That is cool.
So
I think you could totally expound upon that though even further if you wanted to, like voice dictation, just fucking talk about what you're talking about and get it all out and have like a complete history of Second Amendment, pro Second Amendment fighting and like all of the things that the anti-gunners have done over the years, the different programs that have been attempted and failed, maybe even on a worldwide basis, not just America. Like I can't think of anyone who has more of that information, like for lack of a better word, like ready to just draw and shoot, like you have that information and you've spent all this time compiling it. And I think having that under your belt would give you maybe some sort of not that you need it, but it would give you some credibility with people who don't necessarily give credibility to people who just do internet stuff,
Yeah, I hear you. No, I don't. I don't really care about the credibility. I don't even have my name in it. But I do want to be able to put that accumulated knowledge into everybody's hands because again, there's like I don't know how I can't tell you how many conversations I've been in. That's one of the things we get from live conversations that all these other weak ass players just don't have. Like they can't keep up, and they look. They look at the people that do live conversations like we're a bunch of dicks because we're a bunch of dicks because we can keep up. Like we're way faster than any of them, and we are aware of way more stuff than them. Like they do stuff at a pace that's ridiculous. Like they'll do stuff once a week or once a month, and they take forever to prepare it, and they think that it's perfect or whatever. And I don't know what the hell they do because I can't imagine spending a month on anything or spending even a week on anything. It's just ridiculous. So they'll spend all this time. They think they've got something perfect. They put it out, and they'll get a level of response from it and respect from it. And that's fine. They're putting effort into it. I'm not shitting on it. It's just that it's not the same as people that are constantly live. We're wrong all the fucking time when we're live because we don't pay attention to every single detail. We're certainly not researching anything. But we can hold our own in a conversation and we can keep up and we're aware of a hell of a lot bigger scope. And that's something that I know I'm bringing to the game that other ones ain't. But it also means that I'm just not interested in some of it. So I hear what you're saying, but to be honest with you, this is episode 899. It's really episode 850, I think, if I count actual shows that we were on and not like placeholders for days that I didn't do it for 2 months. But I've only missed 2 months out of the last however many years this has been. 850 episodes I went live. So that means, there's a couple of those where I wasn't there. But for the most part, 850 times I turned a button on that said live, and I talked about gun stuff.
Yeah, that's crazy.
You know what I'm saying?
That's a lot of shows, man.
I've talked about stuff, or I've been able to do it because I don't talk about politics all the damn time or whatever. And one of the reasons I do it consistently is because I'm trying to get that information across. So I understand what you're saying, and I have attempted that. But I guess what I'm also saying it for 850 times or whatever, bring that up, is there's massive element for burnout. Now, if I was getting rich off of this, I wouldn't be talking about any of this shit because I would just be doing it, right? Like the guys that are doing radio or whatever, I'm guessing they're rolling in it because they don't ever shut up about it, and they're never complaining and they're always doing stuff and they never bitch about having to go anywhere. They just do it. So they're loving it, right? It's different when, again, those guys, I guess the guys that do daily radio, I don't know. I'll give them as much credit as they deserve because they're obviously not, they've got to be very similar to what we're doing, just that we're doing it without a giant paycheck, right? And no accreditation at all. Like they get like, oh goodness, you do live radio every fucking day, blah, blah, blah. It must be horrible to make a living blabbing all day long. Yeah, well, a lot of people just blab all day long because we got nothing else to do, right? Because we enjoy it, because we value the conversation and the what do you call it, like the evolution of conversation. Now, here's the frustrating part. Yankee and Matt and I don't know, a handful of other people have actually experienced the evolution of conversation. You and everybody else that's listening right now, you people haven't been here that long. Sorry, you just haven't. So y'all get to see conversations. And people who dig it stick around. And I can kind of tell who's going to stick around. Sometimes I'm surprised, but fucking 15 years later, I think we've been doing live stuff since like 9. So, 10 years of live stuff. I can kind of tell when somebody's going to stick around long term. Who's a clover, let's say, like who's in it, who's down for this stuff, and who's thriving on it, and who's going to be here, who's can handle a couple of up and downs. There's people that would like to do it but can't. Like there's just people that they have lives, like there's stuff that's going on. This isn't their bread and butter. This isn't like their ultimate hobby, whatever. Like there are circumstances that are beyond their control. They're not going to be able to be in it. And then there's people that are just, they're in it for some amount of time and then, well, that's it. I'm sick of that guy, whatever. This is too hard. I moved. It ain't worth getting back into it. I like ham radios now instead. I like bicycles now. Video games are more important. So at some point in 2013, I guess, no, that's wrong. Maybe 2015, I figured it out. the best you can accomplish as somebody who's going to be in it forever, because I'm not going anywhere, is to provide places like gun channels where people can come bounce back to, landing pads in the fucking shit, so that they can come back and they know where they're at. And when we need a mass exodus, not a mass exodus, when we need all hands on deck and we need a place like, I don't know, for everybody to, like a landing zone, for everybody to get down and do their whatever they need to do, get recon, get intel, gun channels, right? We have a place for that. I tried to create a place like Every Second Matters so that people that were down could jump over and contribute and consolidate data and accumulate data. I ain't that leader. Like, I can't do that. I can just build shit and offer it. I can't make people do shit. I can't inspire people to do shit. I certainly can't pay people to do shit. Anyway, so this is this many years into it. Best we can do is acknowledge the resources that we have on a cyclical basis, the resources that we've had and that have worked, and the ones that haven't, and start switching shit up, thinking outside the box and attacking this shit like a bunch of freaking warriors instead of like a bunch of spectators. Well, spectators isn't the word. Just participants, maybe.
Yeah, we each get a ribbon, but
No, I mean, people come around, they got valid interests in the industry or the culture or the machines or, the values and stuff. And then whatever, you don't have any obligation. There's a certain responsibility to the country, but, as far as like an obligation to the community, there's none. It's just another thing that people might like or not. And certainly somebody being a dick or whatever, I can understand drive people away. And I'm sure I've driven people away. Nobody's fucking saying anybody's better than anybody over here. Just that I'm sick of, I'm just fucking bitching. So that's why we're doing this show. And that's why, I'll continue to contribute in the way I can contribute to the overall. And then one day when the AIs can figure it all out, they can put our content in the appropriate file somewhere.
I don't know, man. Like,
we're about to change the world with AIs, and as soon as we can really change, as soon as I can like hire some time on a super brain or whatever, like, I'm going to be there with John Lott waiting in line. I'm not going to be farting around. I guess what I started this whole fucking thing with was asking you if you've ever printed anything. So I finally, after like an hour and a half, explained that I'm doing this almanac. So obviously I've produced, it's like not done, but it's, it's far enough along it's process that I was able to print out that sample, that prototype, right, and like show it to people and stuff. So I've worked with this software that you use to create it, and it's fancy, it costs me $30-something a month, but I really like it. So I guess what I was getting at is it's not going to be my last book. I'm going to continue to make some tangible things that'll delve into other areas that I think are lacking. Again, whose shoulders we're standing on, like where things come from, especially with this NRA thing recently. I mean, so many people are willing to burn it, and it's just frustrating to see, one of our oldest things, and it's got such roots. It's like seeing one of the biggest trees just die because people refuse to walk over and water it, like intentionally, not because they got busy or something else happened or they needed the water somewhere, but just decided, let's stop watering that tree.
It does frustrate me, and no offense to Yankee or anything, but it does frustrate me hearing him talk about the NRA the way he talks about it. And not to say that he's wrong about anything that he's...
I understand his point and stuff. It's just that I just don't feel the same way. I come from a different side. I don't want those museums to suffer. I don't want the antis to walk around. I see it as an option, or as an opportunity for us as gun people to, especially the 5 million members, to get rid of 3 or 5 people. Like, how many people could it possibly be? We know it's not the whole 75 board. It's just some number of them. So like, how hard can it possibly be to, everybody's going there on the 2nd. We could just go over there on the 3rd, right?
Do each of those board members get paid money?
Nah. somebody like Marion, what's her face, the chick that invented the first female president of NRA, and the chick that invented Eddie Eagle. So her deal is she's some kind of a rich lady in Florida, and she's influential and like a lobbyist or somehow. So, she pushes people around politically. The NRA gives her $250 million a year. So it's like they pay her nonprofit $250 million a year for being like, hey, thanks for support for being in Florida. And, nobody questions it. And then I think she's in trouble because she just takes and buys houses with that money. Like she just uses that as her slush fund. So they don't get paid, but that kind of shenanigans is happening. At least that's my understanding. I fucking don't know very much more than that.
See, you would think that the board member who's sitting there, who's like an activist and wants to see the best for the NRA and for the future of gun owners and the Second Amendment in America and everything like that, you would think that person not taking pay and donating his weekends or whatever would look over at Marion Hammer or whoever the F and be like, yo, what the hell, and call them out publicly and shame them publicly until it's known and they're gotten rid of, Like that kind of stuff needs to be, like, sunlight is the best disinfectant. And I'm not saying like, we need to...
We don't have enough people, I don't think. I hear you. I don't think, and I think it has happened, but I don't think we have enough membership of NRA that has been interested, when that's happened. They've done it. And we've seen memos and stuff that, when somebody left or was fired and they dropped a memo, as a result. So we see things that, the consequence of, I guess, that exact situation. At least I can think of 3 times where that's happened with this whole last fiasco. And now after talking to some people, the spin is that, what was the name of that first article? The point or this what was the name of that? The trace. The comment I heard at least maybe once or twice from Gun Rights Policy, because I kind of asked the question to a couple of people. I was curious. And because they're not necessarily pro-NRA, but they're not anti-NRA. They're old, so they're not anti-NRA. And I asked them, blah, blah, what do you think? And their idea was people like Pincus or even me, I guess, who are not satisfied with the current state of the NRA, that we are duped by the Trace's propaganda, that the Trace somehow is, anti-gun, and somehow Bloomberg fed them some line of malarkey, and that we are being duped by their line. In other words, we were minding our business, we read a Trace article, and then our panties got in a ruffle. And I'm like, all right, I'm listening to the old guy tell me that, and then I'm like, in my mind, I'm saying, fuck you, man. No. How it happened. But, what am I going to do? I can't tell an anti to like guns. How am I going to tell some old FUD guy that he's wrong about my interpretation of the NRA, at least in a conversation, like I say, again.
Well, he was telling you how you came to your own conclusion. He's not giving you new information. He's assuming information about you that's not true. That's a sophist tactic.
Well, but I'm saying, you and I, if we had that conversation, that disagreement, that, differing point of view, it would take us 5 minutes to get to the point where one or two of us figured out what the hell. With that old guy, maybe it's because I feel like I'm too able to have communication or whatever, but I'm like, dude, I don't even want to get into this with you, guy, because I'm only going to be here for 2 days. And I'm either going to walk away in 5 minutes and you're going to hate me, because you're just going to say, oh, that guy's been traced or whatever. Because I'm certainly not going to change your mind, because it takes you an hour and a half to even to have a conversation, I guess. And I'm I'm just used to having conversations with people who can keep up, or that okay, we'll agree to disagree 2 minutes into it. We don't have to go round and round and round and round where, I don't know. So anyway, I guess I'm just saying that there's
maybe old people shouldn't have positions of power like they do.
No, because it's not just old people. Honestly, it's people that are just not.
Well, they're so hard. They're always so set in their ways. They're always so their opinions are what they are, and And
I'm
no,
picking old people, but it's certainly not old people. Is what I'm saying. There's like just people that aren't online, right? They're just not doing stuff with the online, and so they're never going to see what a live chat's like. They might have seen a TV show where they had a live chat or some movie where it happened, so they're aware of it, but they've never done it. They're not seeking it out. They're not comfortable with it if they ever have done it. That's all I'm saying. So there's, and then again, it's not all old people. These are vital people that have been doing good stuff. It's just that they just don't do it in this format ever. And I'm not saying this format's so good. I'm just saying I think we tend to plow through conversation and stuff at a rate and we consume it daily. Some of us consume it daily. So we just had an opportunity to go through, let's say fans, let's say people that watch what we're doing live, right? Like right now, nobody's watching live. Is anybody watching this? 9 people are watching this, so they know exactly who we are. But if it was like Yankee show and there was like 800 people watching or 1,000 people watching, I forget how many the crowds were back in the day, but 500 people watching back in the old days was like a norm for most shows. Like there was just a lot more people watching back then. It's just when there's 500 people watching, there's people usually waiting in line. Every room was full all the time, right? Because people want to be on a show and there's a bunch of people participating and everything. And like I say, how many years do I have to go through this where, how many, I can talk to, I'm not saying I know every conversation or nothing. I'm just saying compared to some of these people like write books or have radio shows or I don't know, whatever the hell else they do that isn't going online and chatting live. I've seen, I can't even count how many people I've seen come through that are like, advocates and fly-by-nights and hardcore and tactical and hunters and reload, just all the various types. And unlike a book reader or a book writer or a radio show person who might be like, oh, we got so many listeners, or like I sold this many books. Like how many times do you ever get any interaction with those people? Like if they call your radio show, you've talked to them and you've listened to them say, first time caller, I love you, and here's a question. Like that's not interaction. That's fucking listening to a question from a human voice. That's it. And if you're a book writer, like what? Somebody wrote you a letter maybe, and then you read the letter and then you wrote it back? Or like you went to a book signing and they went, I love you. Can you sign my book? And you went, yes. Like, okay, maybe you talked to some people after, but like fuck all those people. Like we talked to, talk to 500 people on a nightly basis, and we have talked with, I'm going to say thousands, at least hundreds, people like yourself, people that have jumped in, people like Woods and Gizzard and everybody, Bob even. Bob's been around for a while, but Bob's fucking not new. Bob only barely came around in 2015 maybe or something. Like I've been chatting with Yankee and Matt since 9 or 10, and there's people that were doing this shit before us. So I'm just saying there's like, there's a lot of people come and gone, even YouTubers, just regular old YouTubers, the boring kinds, where they just make videos. Like, what do they read comments from some people? Like, even in my lowest times, like now when I barely get any comments, you can barely keep up with who people are. Like when you get a zillion comments, I mean, you got to really comment a lot for that person to, remember your name and acknowledge like, oh yeah, we've commented before or whatever, but you're not having relationships like you and I are right now. Like the listeners, the 9 people listening to this are having, because I'm actually watching the comments and chatting, you know what I'm saying? Like there's just no other type of media where you have a finger on the pulse of shit, and that just makes me antsy. Like I listen to some writer and I'm like, shut up, you don't know what you're talking about, dude. Tell me how fucking your audience is. You don't know shit about your audience. You might know some metrics about selling books to your fucking audience. Have you ever challenged your audience to do something in one of your books? Like fucking drop it and do something,
Yeah, and that's a good point too. Like the inspiration to and motivation to get off your butt and go do something. I don't think that comes from a book usually these days anyway. Like maybe at one point it did, but nowadays it comes from chats like this or from videos, like telling you about this thing coming up or this event that you're going to go and have people meet you there and have interaction there or whatever. Like that's what gets people motivated, like like
Oh,
seeing
no.
someone passionate
Get
live.
a couple of people motivated. I don't think there's any. I mean, we'd be done with NFA if I could motivate people, right? We'd have already motivated the shit out of 4473s would be gone, and we'd have machine guns again, and we'd be challenging the NFA.
Well, I mean, back the clock up for me a little bit. Like, if go back to like 2011, would I have said in 2011, "Hey, you're going to be on like gun channels with gun websites and never enough info doing live streams about guns"? I'd be like, "Okay, first of all, who?" And you know what I mean? Like, that's just not something I thought that I would be doing, and that's not something that I felt was necessary at that time, I guess, you know? But then seeing...
Here's where I'm at. Hold on, I got to break in. Here's where I'm at. That thing that I poured earlier, I just went and looked, and I'm at the level. I've got like a gray area here of some minutes, but I'm at the point where I need to do some hustle and then pour the next level. So here's the deal. How many people are watching? There's 10 people watching. There's Echo out there and Woods, who was in here and left. He's still out there chatting. Z, anybody wants to jump in? I think I'm going to leave. One of the reasons I did it on the chamber is because the chamber stays open, unlike Duck. So, right on. So we can throw the link. I will throw the link into gun channels. So anybody wants to just jump in and chat with us. But I need to kind of walk like 12 feet away from the computer often here. So welcome to stay in here and we can bullshit Honda. But I'm going to drop the link on gun channels and shut it down. So again, thanks for the people that are out there listening live. But I'm going to shut it down just because I'm going to be walking away from the computer quite a bit.
Okay, man. Well, thanks for the invite.